All right. It looks like we are indeed alive. It is alive. The question is the audio coming through fine? That is the real question. Okay, there we go. Audio is indeed coming through. Excellent, excellent. Okay, so good morning, good evening, good day, wherever you guys are at. Hope that you are having a fantastic time. And yes, the villain indeed reveals himself. It is I! It has always been me, Laws. Oh man, we are going to have some fun talking about the newest episode of the amazing Digital Circus tonight. And then we'll also be having a writing lesson on realism, which, guess what? There was a moment about that in this episode as well, from Jax calling out whether or not Pomni was really going to be able to shoot. And he even calls out her form, how she's like getting so serious and holding the gun right in the moment that she goes for a trick shot, which would never hit the center can. It works. So you get a little bit of meta jabbing over there at realism. So we'll be talking about that later. Lars, your voice is low and glitching. I'm not hearing that on my end, so I'm not sure what's happening for your connection, Shade. Hopefully it does. Hopefully it doesn't become something that plagues the entirety of the stream. And we got ours here. We got ISO. We got Stormcrow. We got Shade. We got Common Craft. Excellent. Glad to see you all. And let us get started with let's just dive into this episode because wow. I was expecting some good emotional hits. I was expecting shenaniganery. I was expecting all kinds of visual references to video games and to movies that are famous for some of their iconic moments with guns. And I mean, we got all of that. We got Boondock Saints. We got we got Pulp Fiction. We have oh crud! Why is it suddenly escaping me? Christian Bale's sword gun movie. Dang it, why am I suddenly forgetting it? It was right there at the tip of my tongue. Yet again, another good evidence people do not get concussions. You will get memory loss. No, it's not The Dark Knight Rises. Let's see here. Since I brought it up, I gotta quickly now look it up just to. Okay, here we go. Christian Bale, gun sword movie. Equilibrium. That's the name of it. Equilibrium. Aha. Equilibrium is actually a really good movie. If you haven't seen it, highly, highly recommend it. And after you've seen Equilibrium, you'll realize that there's a couple of moments in this movie, especially during the whole hallway shootout scene, which also had some Boondock Saints references in it. You get some Equilibrium stuff going on in there as well. When you say gun sword, I think Final Fantasy VIII. Yes. I can't wait to share my Jack's Mental Disorder essay to anyone who hasn't seen it yet in the Discord. I haven't had the chance to read it yet, so I'm looking forward to reading it, and also what Okean wrote as well, because I know you guys were already posting some ideas, thoughts, and theories on this episode, and I've got some stuff to say as well, though it's officially known as Gunblade. Now you got, in the words of the immortal Seuss, you gotta have some gun swords. All right, so, man, where to begin? Let's actually begin with Kane's ridiculous idea to basically just give all of the characters guns and have them go at it. it's a reflection of the fact that Kane at this point has just really lost it in terms of patience with all of these people, how they're not going along with his adventures, how he has observed, and rightfully so, that the suggestion box created a series of adventures that caused a lot of intergroup turmoil. People weren't getting along as well as he had hoped. And when they did get along, they got along so well that it also made him jealous that they didn't love his particular games. So this is just basically came like, okay, fine. I know you guys need to like basically get out some stress and everything. So here you go. Guns. Because you can't die. You guys can take it all out on each other. And this gives me time to look at pictures of where Pomni very likely put on the headset. Now that's a little curious. We'll have to talk about that later. But yeah, guns everywhere. I liked how Kane quickly shook it up. Just to, again, screw with them all because of how upset he is. It's not just simply that he gave them guns, but that he basically created the Hunger Games scenario with the cornucopia. Look at all of this stuff. Here's all the guns you could ever want. Okay, now the guns are just hidden all over the place, along with the ammo. and like any good shooter game, you got to go and get the ammo. And like the older shooter games, you have very limited ammo, and that ammo is precise for whatever particular gun you've gotten. If you don't have that particular ammo, you are screwed. I immediately had flashbacks to Halo 1 and to GoldenEye, where, believe it or not, that was a difficult thing back in the day. Like, oh crud, I got to get the right ammo. Where are my grenades? Oh crud, I've got like this really good. I got the golden gun, but I don't have the ammunition for it. Dang it! I love that was an element within this episode because it created some fun limitations. It created some extra bit of drama to everything else that was going on. And it necessitated basically constant movement on the part of the characters. So let's see here. Catching up right here. Sounds like the immortal words of Sean Connery. Comcast says Kane seemed to be another bad day away from going full AM hate speech. Yeah. It's like giving Chris and Susie water pistols filled with mayonnaise and unleashing them on an unsuspecting hometown. Christmas, stop! You told me it was eggnog. Yes, but it was really mayonnaise this whole time. Oh, that'd be awful. Putting mayonnaise in with the eggnog? Maybe Kane is starting to obsess with finding the exit from the circus. You know what? I think they're pushing him there. What if you turn on unlimited ammo? If you turn on unlimited, and here's the thing: if you turn on unlimited ammo, a lot of the fun actually does go away, unless you're just in for like a joke match. Like the most epic joke match that I have ever been a part of in any game was an episode. Not an episode. I say episode because I'm thinking in terms of the show. It was a game night with a bunch of guys in high school, and we were playing Halo 2. We were getting really bored, but we didn't want the night to end just yet. So we're like, what if, like, bunch of tired teenage boys playing video games for too long, guys? What if we did unlimited lives in midship with rocket launchers? That's all we've got. 15 minutes. And it was 15 minutes of just unending bliss as we murdered each other in the smallest map in Halo with rocket launchers. There's no getting away from this. There was, after 15 minutes, a pile of dead Spartans in the middle of the map that was huge. You could not use the bottom of the map because of all the dead Spartans that had fallen there as we have been playing for 15 minutes with unlimited lives and rocket launchers. Holy cow, that was just That was absolutely hilarious. I have never had another game like that, not even close. Kind of like the one time that I once participated in a King of the Hill game, in a at a pool party, and that will never be replicated again, because you got to have all the right people at the right time at the right place to be all like, screw it, I don't care if I look stupid. I am going to beat you up to get on top of that little mattress that's floating there in the middle of the pool, and you got like 20 guys and girls just like beating each other up to try to get on top of this mattress. It'll never happen again. Limitation breeds creativity, and ammo limitations are a very subtle form of use gated pressure to improvise and be smart. Yes, that's a very good point there, Common Craft. And Shade, I love Jack's talking about archetypes, really deep analysis about it, or Winnie deep. I want to say that's probably really, but yes, Jax's talk about archetypes. We'll talk about that one next right here, because I think that is a fantastic way that Jax has tried to justify everything that he has done and how he feels within the circus. The Conqueror says, LOL, that field full of dead Spartans sounds nightmarish if you think about it from an in-university perspective. It absolutely was. Art says, that must have been fun. It absolutely was. I wasn't even that good at shooters. I'm not that great at shooters either, but man, that was so much fun. And ISO says, already said energy sword fights. Fun fact, if you both hit each other at the exact same time with energy swords, you both take the same amount of damage, but not nearly as much as the energy sword would do. I think I knew that, ISO. It's been a while. Like, thanks for reminding me of that, because we used to do some really fun like shotgun and energy sword duels as well. Man, early Halo days. You just can't replicate that anymore. Especially the whole LAN party atmosphere where everyone's in the same room. So that you've got to, like, you're just stuck together. If anyone decides to be a spoil sport about it, they are going to get buried by everyone in the room. There were times where someone would be a jerk and would try to like pull the console to shut down the game because they were so angry. One person like got away with it once, and then they got dogpiled, and everyone's like, if you pull that trick one more time. We played again, and he tried to unplug again because he was so ticked off that he kept losing. And these two big football players just like grabbed him and were like, nope, and just hurled him across the room. And they're like, no, you are not getting anywhere near the controller. And he was not allowed to touch the controllers for the rest of the night. And at best, someone was all like, yeah, man, you only get one slice of pizza too. It's like, that's a dick move to unplug the game while everyone else is having fun. Red versus blue was so good. Oh, man. Red versus blue. Glory days. Dan S. is here. Woohoo! Hi, lads. Great to have you here. Concraft, I think that despite what I had seen other people saying, I think Pomni will not give up on Jax. At this point, she is the one who has the best read on Jax from the entire circus. Commoncraft, yes. In fact, at first I was thinking the same thing, that like Pomni was going to give up on Jax. But here's the thing: Pomni's paying attention to Jax while at the award ceremony, and she watches him come back from the bathroom. She's sitting next to Ragatha. She turns to Ragatha and she just shakes her head. It's very subtle. But the amazing thing about that scene is that it's basically Pomni showing that she already knew the lesson that Kinger gives to Ragatha while they're in Loser's Corner. And that says something amazing about Pomni's character, how forward-thinking and feeling she is. She went from being the scared little clown who was so close to abstracting it and just having a mental breakdown and an emotional breakdown, to now being, like Kinger, one of the emotional pillars to the entire group. and arguably even more so because she's able to read other people by now so well. She's taken Kinger's advice to heart about building up good relationships. It's beautiful to see. Dan says, wait, so Pawnee will save Jax from abstraction? I'm all for it. I don't know if she will save him from abstraction, because I believe it was like 2 weeks ago. Who was it? Someone said that Gooseworks had said that someone will abstract before the end of the show. And we all thought that Ragatha was going to be the one closest to abstracting, but now it seems like Jax is probably the closest. Beyond Gangle. Gangle's still dealing with some really heavy stuff. So it's hard to tell for sure who is the closest to abstracting. But Jax is definitely in the running. Lord McGurk is here. Woohoo! Haven't seen you in a while. Haven't been here since Mergeron's episode 7 dropped. This is one of the deepest episodes I've watched ever. It was such a good, deep episode. And I need to watch it again just to take everything in before I then do my review of the episode. The plot twist where Jax doesn't care left the community a little depressed and silent. See, here's the amazing thing about Jax, what he said. And I'm sorry, Shade, I know I said that we would get to your point next, but I got to quickly shift gears here. And Mimic, great to see you here. Woohoo! But what was so amazing about Jax's emotional explosion, how he just turned and you see how that smile just disappears, how a face that honestly without the smile would go dead, we get full dead-faced Jax. And what he is saying, everything that he is saying is not something that someone would say if they actually meant it. Because here's the thing, as someone, as I'm sad for me to say this, but I've met people who actually are as Jax pretends to be. And those people are scum. Absolute scum. And they will do everything in their power to not look that way, even though they act that way. And they will always find a way of shoving it off onto someone else. The fact that Jax says it to Pomni and insists that Pomni believe him and everything, and how he fights back when she's like, no, this isn't you. And then when she starts fighting him, the fact that he doesn't fight back, even though he's like, what, you think this means something? It means it. The fact that he brought it up means that it means something to him and the way that he said it. And the fact then that this all gets followed up with him almost abstracting means that he has created this persona in order to deal with the guilt. Gooseworks said that he had done something that was that is unforgivable or inexcusable, and it is very, very likely tied into Froggy. We definitely get the references to Kaufmo in this episode, and what happened there, and how Jax tried to avoid it all. And we get a hint that maybe Jax helped to push Kaufmo along to his abstraction, which is also something that could very easily have happened. And in any case, as someone who, if you do this, if you go as far as to actually destroy someone, effectively kill them, it does something to you mentally. There's something that we don't often talk about, especially in fiction, about how murder, death takes a massive toll on one's psyche. And either you run from it or you find a way of dealing with it, either healthily or non-healthily. And in this situation, Jax has created a persona for himself to be all like, well, you know what? And now to come around to the whole archetypes conversation, I'm the funny guy. I'm the guy that does these things. I push the boundaries. I break stuff for people's entertainment and enjoyment, though mostly for my own, because nothing matters. And by saying that again and again and again, and then also by being like, and you are an archetype, and you are an archetype, and you are an archetype, and you are an archetype. By putting everyone into specific boxes and designating that they are only doing this particular thing, and that they can only feel a particular way, it distances him from the fact that he has been around people who've abstracted, and that he himself very likely played a part in making them abstract. It's a way of denying his responsibility and denying the feelings that he has. And when it comes down to dealing with very negative emotions, there's a, and this is coming from someone who is definitely not a psychiatrist, so I'm not an authority on this, but there's a metric, or I should say not metric, but there is a spectrum of various positive and negative emotions that you can tap into to help yourself deal with something very awful that's happened in your life. And what you want to do is you want to focus on the positive while not going overboard like Ragatha has. And Jax, for his part, by choosing laughter is not a bad thing. It's normally actually a very healthy thing. But he's taken it, like Ragatha has, to an extreme, and in such has made it very negative, overwhelmingly toxic. And I just really like how Gooseworks has tapped into these very deep psychological issues and has brought them to life through these characters. And the plot twist got me depressed. I'd say I don't blame you, Dennis, for feeling that way. Oprah, you are an archetype. You are an archetype. Everyone gets an archetype. Just like everyone in this episode gets guns. You get a gun and you get a gun. In Jax's case, it almost sounds sort of like an unhealthy coping mechanism. It absolutely is. It's an incredibly unhealthy coping mechanism that Jax has implemented. And the thing is that here's another thing that we can also look at as far as Jax goes in this episode. Jax gets what he wants. He gets to shoot everyone. He gets to wipe out all the other members of the Digital Circus, and he gets to be the last man standing with Pomni. But what does he then do? He's like, well, betrayal. And he is not going after Pomni. He wants Pomni to do him in. Which is very interesting. And is probably, again, a way for him to cope with his guilt. Because, sure, he can get rid of Pomni, someone who we get the feeling that he genuinely cares for, at least on some level. But even more so than that, he's the one who survived when others should have. Like Froggy and Kaufmo. And so I think in a way, him tossing aside the gun and pushing Pomni to get to off him is part of his penance, as weird as that sounds, or at least a part of the way for him to just deal with what he has done to other people. He's like, fine, I've gotten to kill everyone. Now I get my just desserts. No one can get mad at me because I lost, and I can continue pretending that everything is the way that I say it is. Which again is very unhealthy, incredibly toxic. Holy cow, can we just get cinema? Can we get cinema therapy in on this show? Can we do that? I want to see the guys from Cinema Therapy tackle this show and just like watch them melt. I want to see that happen. All right. A reminder that Gooseworks sees the show as a lighthearted comedy. Yes. I says that's part of my essay on Jax 2. Oh, I'm so looking forward to reading that. In Jax's case, yeah, where I got that, seems like he's doing like it's some sort of unhealthy coping mechanism. I think, and then Dan says, I think episode 7 comes out in October. That would be really cool if it does. That would be really cool if it does, not only because keep the amazing Digital Circus hype train going, but also because it will allow them to clear their slate much quicker to deal with producing um, the Gaslight District and Knights of Guinevere. Shade says, another thing I love, the classic cartoon references, how the guns work and how they do with guns are like Looney Tunes. Absolutely. I loved it. Jax pushing away Pomni. I feel like proves that Jax played some part in abstracting Froggy. Pomni hugged Jax and he panicked slightly as if he was scared of something happening to her. Art says, anyone seen Froggy? Big the cat somehow. Lord McGurk. This is sort of similar to Blitz from Hell of a Boss. He pushes people getting close to him away because he's scared of hurting people like he did to others before, and he doesn't want to do it again. Shade says, I see Jack Beck story about the farm is the reason to feed the cone is because of the farm. Okay, not exactly sure what you're trying to say there. Conquest says, someone else suggest that Ragatha claiming she failed Jax may not be just insecurity, and that given he is the newest and youngest in the group, he may have been getting worse with every friend he lost. Oh, that's a great theory, and I will definitely subscribe to that. When Tyler coming right here, I think Jack's sadist feels horrifying realistic because he has no humanity because his friend died and he's all alone. So why he not going to happen again? Yeah, no, there's definitely a sense of fatalism to Jax with how none of this matters or anything like that. And yeah, but the thing is that we know that that's not the case. This is just him trying to cover up how he feels. Let's see. Let me get to the top of what ISO was saying. Aha, my essay time. Okay, let's read the essay. One of the best scenes was when Jax went on a rant about being evil. He doesn't care about anybody. He likes seeing people suffer. Hurting people brings him joy. It was all like he was trying to reaffirm his self-perceived perception of his personality. Something that we understand about people's mental health is that you can actually trick yourself into being something you're not. In your brain, we all have neural pathways, paths that our neurons follow that are the reason we think the way that we do. If you try to think in a way that you're not accustomed to, your neurons fire down a newer, weaker path. In a matter of days, the new pathway can grow stronger, and the previous path gets weaker and weaker in a process known as synaptic pruning, making it harder to return to your previous way of thinking. When somebody experiences something traumatic or faces extreme guilt in an attempt to cope, your neurons can automatically fire differently. A different thought process, a different approach to the situation. It's a self-preservation system and one that Jax is already neck deep in. Also, when Pomni hugs Jax, he smiles for a second before his expression looks scared and he pushes her away. Yes to all of that, ISO. Thank you for that essay. I think that you were right on the money for the real world analysis that we can give to what is happening to Jax in a horribly fantastical situation. And an interesting thing is as the show goes on, as this episode goes on, we also just see Jax breaking down even more. He's really excited and happy at first, but he just keeps on slowing down, getting worse and worse as time goes on. How he just unloads into Ragatha, and he doesn't really ever recover from there. He put all those bullets into her, but what did it matter? That persona that he bought into there was no catharsis. There was no reward for it. As a result, it's what am I even doing? He hit everything and then also going up against Gangle and against Zubul. Like Gangle is laughing until the moment that her last heart goes out. Zubul goes out with was just with the quadruple birdie, flipping all the birds to him and Pomni, and and yeah, Kinger is a well fought victory because wow, Kinger single handedly and while reloading as well took on Pomni and Jax, and probably only really did himself in by accident with his ricocheting bullets. Like it's a well fought game with great moments, none of which are cathartic to Jax, meaning that there's no reward, there's no good feelings, there's no deeper understanding or deeper realization of self. And as a result of that, everything that Jax has convinced himself that he is, that this is his archetype, that's all been proven a lie by the end of this episode. So then, like, it's like, so what are you going to do? Jax, yeah, it makes it feel scared. Jax doesn't know where to go from this point. That's why he gets so close to abstracting, because the identity that's allowed him to remain firm in any kind of way within the circus has just been shattered. And I was not expecting that. That was a really, really cool way for the story to go. I mean, super dark, but really cool. Let's see here. It reminds me when Ragatha accuses him of trying to ruin Pomni, he just shuts her up with bullets. He definitely doesn't want to do bad to Pomni, and hearing anything about him doing bad to Pomni makes him feel scared. I like that. I like the observation. And we need to talk about the butterfly. What was that? Oh, we will talk about that butterfly eventually. Put a pin in that. Then, regardless of what you're going through, if you're a bad, toxic person, you'll start pushing away all the people that genuinely care about you. No excuses. I'm going to chill and be there for Ragatha instead. Yeah. And Kinger gave some excellent advice about how if someone doesn't want your help in the moment, giving them space is not a sign of you saying, "Oh, I don't love you anymore. I don't care about you." But instead it's a chance to let them do their thing. And so long as you are ready and willing to be there for them again when they need it, that's what matters. And that counts as real affection, real friendship, real love. And I found that to be, again, just a very good, powerful lesson. And it's one that actually far more of us need to take to heart than I think we would care to admit. I know that that's a lesson that I've had to learn myself in various relationships. It's one that I've tried to help other people realize as well. And it's such a hard one to take to heart. ISO, to put that in a less psychological way, Jax has a coping mechanism where he pushes people away so that he doesn't hurt anymore. Kinger and Pomni, the psychiatrist pals. Absolutely. Lord McGurk, the 200 character limit in YouTube live comments sucks for this kind of live stream. It absolutely does, Lord McGurk. It absolutely does. I'll just tell you this. One of the things I've done in the past is I'm like, okay, then let me write it on out, what I want to say, and then just very quickly clip the different segments that you can fit in with the limitation. I mean, if any, actually, I don't know if we have super chats enabled on our channel. If you do, one of the things with super chats is that if you pay, you get to say more. But we've actually never asked for super chats on our channel. It's something that's just like, if someone wants to say it, someone wants to pay, then woo. But I mean, it'd be so easy to just try to make the channel all about pumping cash out of it. But at that point, then I think a lot of the fun of just doing this as a hobby and as a part-time job kind of goes out the window. Yeah, Google Docs time. Arts asks, what do you think will happen with Pomni? Ooh, man, that's a good question. I think that Pomni is still very much going to be Pomni going forward. I want to see Pomni try to reconnect again with Gummy Goo, and I think that we're going to get that happening. I think we're going to have that happen again here pretty soon, is my guess. But as far as dealing with other characters, I feel like Pomni, who is very scared of abstracting and who's very scared of being around other abstracted individuals, will have to face that particular fear when one of her friends within the circus abstracts. I think that that's where Pomni as a character is going to go next. Shay says, I think we need to think why the digital circus was created, why somebody who created virtual reality we cannot escape, and how the others got there. I mean, Pomni, she just found a headset and puts it on. It's not weird for you guys, and we're not going to forget the images of the computer, the mentality of people, what is truly going on. So, Shay, excellent questions right there. We don't really know. We are missing those critical clues in order to start bringing everything together. I'm right now still standing by my personal theory that CNA created the Digital Circus, that Kinger was a part of making it. We especially get in this episode that Kinger feels very guilty about things he did in the past, things that probably led to the creation of the Digital Circus, and was then happened to everyone who has gone into that circus since then. Ooh, I didn't realize I didn't have the footage going. I'm bringing the footage back. And so I think it is that you've had these people who worked on this program, and then whoever got stuck in it, and either that could have been a bug that was just never fixed, or there could be something way more malicious happening where it's like, no, it was intended for people to get stuck in this place. But whatever the case be, with those who have gotten stuck in there, based off of what we've seen in this episode, with Kane looking back at the old computer and at the old place where very likely, again, Pomni found the headset. Because we know that Pomni, for the fun of it, goes into abandoned spaces and explores them for fun and makes videos about it. It's probably where Pomni found the headset. And it's very, very likely that Pomni was never intended to be in the circus. Because, again, she, after episode 3, has been handling the circus way better than anyone else. And it almost makes me wonder if everyone else who's been in the circus other than Pomni, that it was absolutely intentional. Why? Maybe for entertainment, maybe for torture. Who exactly knows? One of the weird things also needs to be considered in this is that, and we got this again in this episode, that Kane and Bubble are recording what's happening. And they've got products to sell and stuff like that. Like, what exactly is going on here? We don't really know. Maybe it's an aspect of their programming that was never fully realized or developed, or maybe it's all part of just like selling this odd facade of the Digital Circus and how it's supposed to operate. But there's all of these clues that we are missing. We're missing the central piece that will allow us to start bringing this puzzle together, or the border pieces that allow us to finally say, okay, we don't exactly know where this piece yet goes, but we understand that it needs to go in this particular area because we now have our parameters. We're missing a ton. The crazy thing is that we've only got 3 more episodes to go, which makes me wonder if Gooseworks does intend to answer any of these questions, or if it really is going to be all about these characters in a really horrible situation and then finally breaking out, and then it's like, then they woke up, it was all a very horrible dream. We don't know. With only 3 episodes left, I'm like, that's a lot of weight to lift. That's a lot to do. What I like about this episode is that they took over 30 minutes to deliver not only on a fantastic game, but give us all this development for Jax's character, development for Ragatha, development for Kinger, development for Zubul, development for Gangle. Like, it was wow. And so if Gooseworks and Glitch are willing to put in that much effort and have longer episodes, I'm hoping that they then do a few other longer episodes, maybe one or two more, to help bring everything together. So that way we then have the completed picture. We don't really know if Gooseworks will do that. So we'll just have to continue watching and see. Let me then catch up some stuff you guys were saying here. CDVA is here. Woo! This episode was peak. The most crazy thing was Zubul just coming out and saying they wanted to have sex. Yes, thank you for someone bringing that up, because I definitely wanted to address that. I thought that was hilarious. And I love how, like, Jax is laughing, but Jax also like, what? What? Like, so like something like, is that actually something that could happen here in the circus? Because a boy's got needs. That's kind of what that little shot communicated right there. I also love the jab at the shipping, at the fan shipping in this episode. Again, I think that if there is any ship that has any chance of going anywhere, I think the dark horse is now coming more and more to the forefront, and that is Zubul and Gangle. Vivek, you cannot help a person who isn't willing to accept the help nor change for the better. Jax ain't Ragatha's, Pomni's, or anyone else's responsibility. The only person who can change Jax is Jax. And that's very true. And while other people can be there to support Jax, and that's the right thing to do, as much of a jerk as Jax is, Pomni is doing the right thing by bringing the tough love and by also trying to understand him, and then by giving him space. She wants to be someone who can help the other people in the circus out. And I love how that ties back again into the conversation that she had with Kinger back in episode 3. Like, it shows her character progression, how she's taken it to heart, and how this has really changed her into a far more positive and grounded person. We haven't seen Pomni really lose it since episode 3. She has become way more stable and solid, which is honestly very needed in this show. About Jax's expression, that is. Oh, I'm missing something right here, aren't I? So other people popped up. I almost hit a bullseye on Jax's expression, that is. Yes. Pomni had an Alice in Wonderland moment, so to speak. And she caught the rabbits. Maybe the typical AI became self-aware, supernatural power, enslaved human for money. Another thing I know, it's not related, but you think of bad end friends. Lord McGurk says, I genuinely hate when everything was just a dream, since usually that makes everything that happens have absolutely zero meaning. So I'm going to say this, Lord McGurk, the answer to that, my response to that is yes. 99% of the time, yes. Unless you show how a character changes afterwards. So here's actually a really good example of and then I woke up. It was all just a dream. A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. Ebenezer Scrooge wakes up. It was all just a dream. But it was a dream that transformed how he saw the world, and we see how he becomes a better man because of the visitation from the 3 Christmas spirits and from his business partner. So even though it was all just a dream, it mattered because it changed his perspective. There's also a choose your own adventure story of I think it's Munchkin in Dreamland, where you read through the story as this Munchkin who goes to this magical dreamland, and depending on the choices that you make as you go through this book, you get different endings, and some of the endings are actually like really telling, and it's just a kid's book. But even for a kid's book, you're like, wow, like he actually gained something, he earned something, or he learned something because of this magical dream. The Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. when the Pevensies come back at the end of the book, like only like a minute has passed. It's effectively just a dream, but it's a life that they lived in this other world that completely changed them to become better people, or at least Peter, Lucy, and Edmund really change as a result of that. If you can show how people change because of the dream experience, you can kind of get away with it. It's still one that 99% of the time I don't like because it does rip away a lot more of the meaning. And honestly, maybe using The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is a bad example because it is a portal fantasy story. And as we learn throughout all of the different books, this was no dream. They literally went to another world on just on a different timeline. And in The Magician's Nephew, there's all these other worlds. And you learn through The Horse and His Boy and Prince Caspian and The Silver Chair just how important those experiences of the Pevensies were to characters in that other world, showing that their choices, their actions had drastic consequences on the lives of countless people. So that is there you go. There's that tangent for you. 3-hour season finale. Oh, wouldn't that be awesome? That would break the bank for Glitch. Not really. They've made so much money with the Amazing Digital Circus. They can afford to do a 3-hour finale. It would probably kill Gooseworks, though. When a dream happens because of something that happens to the character themselves and does have a meaning to the story is great. I love that. But when it's just a dream to be a dream, that's the big plot twist. It annoys me. Absolutely. I suddenly see shade. They're just horny. Yes, because Zubal's got needs. Tyler says, the fight between Pomni and Jax with no music is very scary. Yeah. When it comes to visual storytelling, especially with like animation or live action, sometimes not having any music really, really ratchets up the tension so much more than if you've got an excellent soundtrack. And I love excellent battle soundtracks, but when there's silence, oh, that brings out a whole new element to the story. We haven't seen that mannequin that's been poking around up in the background. Not in this episode, at least as far as we could easily tell. But we did get to see the disappearing guy pop up again. Fabio says, Kane looking at the CNA photos like, here, this. You were made somewhere here. Do they do what they wrote into you properly? I can't not be that. Can't not be, right? I should be able to do things wrong. Yeah, Kane is going through Kane's own existential crisis just continues to unfold. And by now he's glitching out in front of everyone. And it's kind of crazy to see how everyone's just accepted that. It's actually really scary. In the words of Biggie Smalls, it was all a dream. Dennis, lads, I'm back. Great to see you back. Art says, I agree with that. If it makes sense narratively, it's done well and develops the character. Just a dream can work. You just got to do it right, which can be a challenge. Exactly. Yeah, it's not one that I would go for. In my own books, The Legend of the Ten Lords and Monarch Mercenaries, where people fall asleep and then get transported over to another universe. The thing is that it's very easy for them to write off as, oh, that was just a dream, until people who have also crossed over begin doing things in real life to get revenge on them for the things they did in this other dream world. Or sometimes the emotional trauma, the experiences, and other things find their way to creep across the boundaries of universes back into the waking one. While so much of what they're doing is effectively happening in a dream, it's a dream that just becomes more and more real as the story progresses. I wish I had that for Murder Drones. Murder Drones, definitely. I would love to see another season for Murder Drones. We've already gone over this. Maybe eventually Liam Vickers will be convinced to come on back, because Glitch will not touch the show without him. They'll do merchandise and they'll do little fun bits, but they will not continue the show without him. Take a good drink of water. Keep yourselves hydrated. It's funny how Zubul said she wanted to have her freak off, and Jack smirked at her like that, considering both of their VAs are married in real life. Really? I did not know that. I did not know that. But yeah, Jack saying how they wanted to have sex, that caught me off guard. I had to go back and be like, wait, what? I'm like, yep, yep. And that kind of checks for Zubul. That actually really does check for Zubul. CVA says, if we're getting 3 more episodes, I wonder how Zubul's episode's going to play out. Gender dysphoria is definitely a big part of their character, and I wonder if they're going to get into that more. Zubul X Gangle is the most canon. Yes, CDVA, they are the most canon. I would like. It's interesting because I feel like I don't know if Zubul's actually going to get a dedicated video to them, dedicated episode to themselves. As the shows progress, Zubul comes more and more into the picture, and it becomes clear that Zubul is a supporting character and slash supportive character, and that they're basically there to try to keep the peace with Gangle, like trying to help Gangle figure things out. And this episode was really, really good about that. And actually, let me just hop onto that for a moment, for a hot moment. The interaction between Zubul and Gangle, where Gangle's talking about how she just feels like there's this part of her that makes everyone hate her. And how can you come to love yourself and appreciate yourself or expect that anyone else will love you if you've got this thing about you? And what I found very telling about Zubul's response is how Zubul says that what you have within you, whether that be a mental illness or a personal flaw or a bad character quirk, or maybe it's just the way you look physically, who knows? You are who you are, and everything about you makes you unique. It's one of the things I would tell my students all the time about how we're all gems, and every gem has multiple facets, meaning multiple points where the gem comes together and refracts the light and becomes something beautiful. And you want to have a multifaceted gem. If you remove the facets of the gem loses its uniqueness and beauty. And so even if it's something that you don't necessarily like about yourself, and there's plenty of ugly cuts to gems, learning how to love a gem for what it is and then working on it, polishing it and cutting it to make it become the best that it can be, that is the process of life. That's what we should be doing with all of ourselves. We don't find fulfillment unless we are working on absolutely bettering ourselves, which takes on multiple different forms. But until we get to that point where we're truly okay with who we are, you have to love yourself, warts and all, and move forward. And that's what Zubul's trying to tell Gangle. But Gangle's having a hard time accepting that. And it's also kind of a rough thing for Zubul themselves to say, because as we know, going back to episode 3 of the show, as Zubul was talking about it with Kane, Zubul feels incomplete. They're missing something. They haven't yet found that body part or that thing that will make them feel like they fit. We also learned back in episode 5 that Zubul's had multiple jobs. Zubul's been bouncing around from thing to thing to thing, trying to find that one thing that will help them to feel whole. And so it's a very courageous thing for Zubul to tell Gangle, and it also is reflective of what they hope. That Zubul hopes that they are lovable, can be loved, and love themselves for everything that they are, even though they feel that they're missing something very important. And that was a very deep kind of conversation because sometimes, and this has happened, I think this has happened to all of us, you're having a conversation with someone, and someone's like, hey, can I be real with you? And they begin bringing up something that like you yourself are like, oh, I'm not an expert, or oh, I'm having that same problem. But you're expected to say something encouraging. And so what you end up saying is you end up saying what you hope for yourself. And I really enjoyed seeing that. It made their conversation just feel so real. It was just really, really good. Uh, Gangle going crazy, firing a Tommy gun, making V from murder drones respect. Yes, yes. Gangle going crazy with a Tommy gun would definitely have V's respect. I feel the same as Hard, except Homestead is back with Homestead or Homestuck. Homestuck is back, but with help of the creators of Has Been Hotel. I'm not saying the name. I'm still traumatized by how bad it is written. Well, we'll see what happens with Homestuck. That's something I do not know Homestuck very well at all. So even though I'm like, ooh, it'd be fun to talk about the fact that VisiPop is now working on Homestuck, I'm like, I don't know enough. I'm not qualified to talk about this really. Other than that, I hope that VisiPop's team in Australia does a fantastic job with Homestuck, because if they don't, VisiPop will be destroyed online. The Homestuck community is huge and is still represented in large numbers, and very healthily so, at Comic-Con. Zubul has lived 1,000 lives truly. Yes, and if you also want to live 1,000 lives like Zubul, read more books. CVA, I wonder who's going to abstract, Jax or Ragatha. At this point, CDVA, I'm going to say that Jax has a greater chance of abstracting than Ragatha, because Ragatha's got Kinger and Pomni by the end of the episode there to help her out. We got Lord McGurk who's got some stuff going on here, so I'll wait a little moment for Lord McGurk to post everything. Fabio Welche, at least it won't be written by VisiPop, and that, if that's what worries you. Yes. I mean, because it's already been written, and you just got to find the right people to adapt it. Ooh, boy. CVA, Viv better not make all the characters twinks with too thick limbs. Well, we'll see. We'll see how it gets adapted. It's been announced, and now we just gotta wait and see. It's kind of like with Rings of Power being announced, where I'm like, you know what? I'm excited, but also horrified at the same time. Let's wait and see. And then when it comes out, you can then truly judge if it's an abomination or not. So let's see here. Other things to really bring up from this episode. Man, no, okay. So coming back while I'm waiting for Lord McGurk to finish posting stuff up here, I'll just say this: the action for this episode was truly just spot on. Loved it. I loved all the different references that they made to games and to different movies, and talking about something that Shane brought up earlier about like with the butterfly. I really liked how how the game went on, it just became even more and more deranged by tapping into something that Kane had said back in episode 1 that I felt really hadn't been fulfilled until now. That in the digital circus, basically your imagination is the only thing that's really preventing you from doing the stuff that you'd like to do. So when Kinger makes a healing butterfly, that's something that makes sense to him. That's in his own imagination. He's able to make that happen. Ragatha does not want to get shot. She sticks her finger into the gun and causes it to blow back and hit Jax, taking out one of his hearts. Kinger is just like, you know what? I'm going to take you guys out with my bullet just ricocheting all over the place, and so we get characters suddenly doing really crazy things because they imagine it to be so. Pomni tapping into her darker side, doing a trick shot that shouldn't have hit the middle can, but succeeds in doing so. We finally get imagination playing a role in how the digital circus truly operates. The thing is that the characters, other than Kinger, don't seem to have any sort of control or understanding of this power. And the only thing that's really preventing Kinger from using it more is just the fact that Kinger is going insane. So, if based off of stuff that's happened in this episode, if any of these characters are paying attention to what they're now able to do, this could be huge for them influencing the digital circus going forward and possibly breaking out. That's just something to bear in mind. Pomni definitely gave off confident, supportive older sister vibes this episode, and Kinger gave off sweet, supportive father vibes as usual. We love you, Kinger. Oh man, yeah, Kinger just being the best. All right, Lord McGurk, let me then catch up with what you've written right here. Ragatha and Jax are similar, but different. Ragatha doesn't want people going away from her, trying to be as nice as possible, while Jax pushes people away to hurt them. They both care about people, which includes Pomni. Ragatha is scared of not being good enough, not being kind enough, so she tries to do as much as possible that she possibly can to ensure that people know she cares for each other. Jax, however, pushes people he cares about away. He's scared of showing the cares about people. He thinks that if he allows people to be close to him, he'll lose them, lose someone he cares about. They are both similar since they don't want to lose the people they care about, but they are scared of losing them in two different ways. Lord McGurk, I think that is a fantastic observation and breakdown of those characters. And because they're actually so similar in that way, it makes really good sense why Jax and Ragatha would have a very hard time getting along, because they are really similar, but they take those similarities in drastically different directions. Fabi says, does this mean Zubal's just not going to manifest it without doubt, and just not manifesting it without doubt enough? What do you mean, Fabi? Are you talking about how Zubal is missing something to themselves because they just haven't been able to conceive of it, manifest it? The secret. If you want something enough, strongly enough, and you put those vibes out into the universe, those vibes bring it back to you, and the miracle happens. Yeah, no, I've been wanting to be a professional author and get buco bucks, and the universe has not yet delivered on that. So the secret is a lie. You have to work for what you want. Okay, let's see here. What else to bring out and about from this episode? Because we got the guns, all that time about all the guns, okay, actually, there is since I can't really think about what's immediate, what else we should talk about for this episode before switching gears on over to the writing lesson for tonight. Then let me bring up what the story that I was going to bring up last week and then absolutely forgot. I apologize for forgetting it, but it works really well for this episode. About the time that I nearly got shot. Gotta do okay. Probably I gotta do it with an empty mind. Oh, I didn't know the best way to imply the sex thing and just went with squiggly. All right. If I might bring up Deltarune, as I often do, I wonder if Chris is in a similar dilemma, that they can't get close to people because they think they pose a danger to others due to their nature. The main exception with Susie because they couldn't stand to not take action anymore. Arts, I think there's some validity to that particular look at Chris, where it becomes clear as the story goes on that Chris wants to have connections with other people. But because of the deal that they've made, very likely to get back Des. I mean, it's not been confirmed, but it's one that I feel very strongly that's the case, that Chris is trying to get Des back. That particular devil's bargain has made it where Chris is like, look, I've got the player controlling me a whole lot of the time. I've got all these things I've got to do, things I don't really want to do. Is it even worth trying to get close to other people because I don't really have the opportunity? And to go along with that, Arts, I think, and this is going to be the topic for a later video, I think that it was absolutely a mistake that Susie went to Dark World, and not that the prophecy doesn't call for her, but rather instead that I think it was that Carol and Chris were trying to get Noelle into the Dark World back in chapter 1, and it didn't work. Susie got in, and with Susie being in there, at first it's all really tense, but as we know, Chris has got a crush on Susie. So when you're stuck in another world with your crush, I mean, you're gonna make the best lemonade out of the lemons that have been handed to you, and you're gonna be praying to the gods, thank you for these lemons. I think that that's kind of the situation that Chris found themselves in chapter 1, and being in a situation where they're now finally with their crush one-on-one. They're absolutely going to spend time with Susie, take that chance because the chance has now been afforded to them. And we see how the story starts changing from there, because it's very clear that Chris is not so keen on going along with this plan anymore by the end of chapter 4. And it's because of Susie and because of all the other adventures that Chris has gone on and the friends that Chris has made along the way, even with the player interfering, because that is better than doing nothing. So Alfie's screw up the plan, LOL. Yes, absolutely. Alfie's is the real MVP. So no, I think I did hear that story about the time you almost got shot. I didn't remember last time. Was that time you were at the party and some guy got belligerent over his truck? So not over his truck. It was my truck. So here's the story. So I went out to a bonfire with a bunch of friends in college, and it was that this girl wanted to have her couch burned. Rather than donating it or selling it, she just really wanted to burn the couch. It was kind of odd. But in any case, so we went out and a bunch of other people met us to go burn the couch. And while we were out there, one of the things that a bunch of us didn't know was that a load of dudes and some dudettes were bringing their guns along. And it was the most unsafe environment that I have been in, or one of the most unsafe environments I have ever been in. I have only been in a few situations comparable where it's all like, if I make one wrong move, I might die in the next few minutes. Like, I've only been in a handful of other situations like that. Having to involve gangsters and possibly terrorists? Who knows? That's another story. But so you got all these people there with their guns, pointing guns at each other, waving guns around, cleaning guns while guns are pointed at other people. It was just super unsafe. And so I was already feeling really jittery about being there. And so too were a lot of other people. But it was one of those instances where people don't speak up because they don't want to be the odd man out. They don't want to be bullied and teased, especially by a bunch of other people who've got weapons in hand. But things finally came to a head when some of these guys decided to put up some targets, and the targets were right next to the vehicles, with my truck being on their impromptu shooting range. And so when I saw that they were shooting at my truck, I was all like, nope, none of this. So I shouted out really loud. I shouted like, oh, everyone, that's my truck over there. Like, stop firing, put your guns down. I'm going down range. These are all guys who say that they love to use guns. They say they all know how to use guns, and they know the terminology of guns. When someone says that they are going down range, they mean that they are going in the direction that you've been shooting. And when someone says that they are going down range, everyone on the line puts the safety on their guns, and those guns go down, and not a single finger rests on the triggers of those guns. That is proper gun safety. And I have gone shooting with enough guys. I've gone shooting with cops. I've gone shooting with soldiers. I've gone shooting with Boy Scouts. I've gone shooting with enthusiasts. And I know that they all use the same terminology. So when these idiots said that they didn't hear me or that they didn't understand what I was saying, you have to be a moron who has never gone shooting before or to not know that when someone is saying my truck is that way, stop shooting, rack your guns, put your guns down, I'm going downrange. You don't point your guns in the direction of the dude who is walking out onto the range. So one guy deciding that he would be really cool and show off for the ladies shot a bullet right over my ear. And that was one of the most unnerving instances. One of the things is that it was at night, so it's very low visibility, and it was also very rough ground. Had I stumbled at the moment that he shot, he would have put a bullet in the back of my head, and I would be dead. I wouldn't be here tonight. That's how close. That's how close I got to being shot. And I got shot at because this jerk thought that he was being funny and that he was showing off. And I know he was showing off because I heard him and no one else shot as well. And they all laughed after he put a bullet over my ear. So I got back to my truck. Here's the thing. I didn't turn around. I didn't say a word. I got in my truck, drove, and I was just like, I'm leaving. I am done. As I began driving, all the people who wanted out, and there was a significant number. There was like 7 or 8 different people who were like, I want out of this place. I want out of this place. Came, they're like, Lars, are you leaving? I'm like, yeah, I'm leaving. And they're like, can we please come with you? This is way too unsafe. I'm like, load up. Everyone, get in my truck. And so I load up everyone into the truck and that wanted to leave, and we left. And I expected to hear that someone died at that bonfire. No one did. No one got injured. They were all incredibly lucky. And it's one of those instances where I'm like, yeah, no, if I ever go shooting with someone, they have to know how to be safe with guns. You have to be safe with them. I like guns. I am not scared of them. I'm not shy around them. But I respect those weapons. That was the very first lesson I was ever taught before handling a gun, before handling a real gun. My grandpa, who's a retired police officer, sat me down and he's like, okay. And this was just a BB gun. It was just a BB gun, but he was all like, Lars, this is a weapon. This right here will hurt someone if you shoot at them. Know this, you can never, ever, ever take back any shot you make. You cannot rewind the clock. You cannot get a do-over. Once a bullet is in the chamber, and once you have taken off the safety, that thing is ready to go. The moment you squeeze the trigger, that bullet goes flying, and you can never, ever, ever take it back. So you make sure, Lars, that the safety remains on and that your finger's off the trigger until you are ready to shoot. And you make sure that your target is exactly what it is that you want to hit and nothing else. That was the very first lesson I was ever given for how to handle a firearm. And I personally believe that if more people got that particular lesson and learned how to respect a weapon and that it's a choice, every bullet is a choice, and if you make the wrong choice, you are screwed. I think more people would respect firearms. That's my personal opinion. Maybe they wouldn't. Maybe I'm the good boy that actually listened to Grandpa, while maybe all the other boys there that night did get the talk from Grandpa about how to properly handle a firearm. Like, whatever, cramps. I don't know. But yeah, that's my one time of getting shot at. So as far as this episode goes, that's the funny thing. This episode doesn't trigger me at all. Like, I am absolutely fine with it because I know what it is. It's funny. It's great fun. I've done paintball. I've done airsoft. I've done land battles. I've done all of this stuff. So like, I'm totally okay with it. But the moment that you're in the presence of a real firearm, It's real, and it's time to treat it as real because it is. All right, sage advice for any gun owner. Yep, yep. TV account says people forget the power of a gun is equal to the power of God. I mean, I personally would say that God's more powerful than a gun, but the answer is yes, because a gun can take a life or change a life in a split second, which again is why you should treat all guns with respect. You don't have to love guns, you don't have to own a gun, you don't ever have to use a gun. But if we can treat guns with more respect, I think that would go pretty far, especially here in America. Thank you. Welcome to my TED Talk. Let's see here. I says, bet no one would laugh if that bullet went slightly astray and criminal charges would be filed. Yo, exactly. Thing is this, knowing some of the guys that were there that night, I think that they would have done their best to bury my body in the desert and try to make sure that no one ever found out. The only thing is that with that many people there at that party, there's no way that they would have gotten away with putting a bolt in the back of my head. Top of that, my ghost would have come back to haunt them all until they were dead. McGurk, I'd be furious if someone did that. Oh yeah, no, I was ticked. That was actually the last time I hung out with almost any of those people, at least of those who stayed there at the bonfire. Everyone else who actually left with me were all good people. I'm still really good friends with a couple of them, but yeah, everyone else who remained at that bonfire, no, I cut them out of my life, and good riddance. And come to find out, like years later, oh boy, yeah, they were some bad stuff. I got other stories about those people and some of the crazy things that they did that I found out afterwards, how they came to try to screw over my life and how they tried to screw over my life in college. Moral of the story is try to have good friends. If someone's not being a good friend, you do what you can to repair it, to repair the relationship. If the person is being way too toxic, as Mimic said, you know what? You can't fix someone. Only they can fix themselves. And sometimes the best thing to do, the most loving thing to do, is just to put distance between you and that other person. You don't need to stay in a bad relationship with anyone. There we go. Drinking some more water. Everyone watch out for Sharpshooter Lars. He will shoot his way right into your heart. Is that Riz or what? I got my Riz bullets. A gun shoots projectiles at the speed of sound, which goes through almost anything animals have on them. Yeah. Exactly. Respect what guns can do. Which coming back to the episode, obviously way more lighthearted. Actually, to kind of tie into what the lesson for tonight will be about realism, there were some really good moments as far as like realistic stuff that happened that just actually upped the ante and also upped the humor and the world building. So actually, I kind of want to take a quick moment and see if we can pull those up here. Like, because I just have like the chopped up footage right here. I'll actually pull up the episode and we'll look at a few moments. Fabio, driving my car right after a car. Hey, that car is shaped like a car. Car. How about your car? I'll go 100 cars. Oh boy. Cars are happening in Fabio's life. Yep, make it like Ragatha and keep your distance. The more you know, and knowing is half the battle. G.I. Joe. Oh yeah. All right, so let me bring up. Let's see here. Let me bring up the episode and see if we can get some of those moments, some of those realism moments. Conversation. Let's see here, because I think that will actually end up being a really good segue then into tonight's lesson. Moments where characters are doing things that are actually realistic, despite how fantastical the world of the Amazing Digital Circus is. And even though those two things seem incongruent within the story, it actually helps to elevate the storytelling. So the very first one I want to look at is where Jax and Pomni are together in the hallway shooting at cans. we'll have a look at this. We'll have a look at this. We'll have a look at this particular moment, and I'm going to break it down why this moment of realism ends up being really, really good for the overall episode. TV account, is there a type of spectrum when it comes to how much realism is in a story? I would say TV account, yes. And we can actually get more into that once we start having the actual lesson, because there is a spectrum of having a story where like everything is super fantastical. So you need like just a handful of things that are realistic in order to anchor the audience. And then there's other stories that you want to be way more realistic with just a handful of really creative, fantastical things. And that's actually in one of my stories, Bleed, Steam, and Steel. Most of the story is pretty realistic, with the exception of a massive steampunk powered battle suits and a little bit of magic. So, Lord McGurk says the characters being realistic is more so important here, since it's meant to be real people stuck in a fantasy world. Lord McGurk, that is absolutely the case. The show here focuses far more on realistic interactions and reactions from the characters, because they are real people, as you said, and everything else is supposed to be imagination-wise. And this moment right here in the hallway helps to re-emphasize that, as well as showing how the Digital Circus reacts to how you think. So here we go. I'm going to try to make sure I don't deafen people as I pull up the audio a little bit right here, and here we go.
So, who are you gonna kill first, Pom Pom?
I don't know if I'll really be doing much of the killing. I'll just find guns for you, and you can do all the violent stuff. You like...
Pomni, I just gotta say this right here. This is great. Pomni being like, I actually don't want to kill anyone. I'll just grab up the guns for you. And Jack's like, this is no fun. This is also kind of thinking a little bit ahead to later on in the episode. This is Jax basically setting up for Pomni to do him in, so that way, again, he does not have to live with the consequences of his actions, and he can try to hold on to that archetype, that persona that he's built for himself to justify how he feels and to adapt to how he feels within the circus.
Like that, right?
You know none of this is real, right?
Oh, what do you mean? Like the circus?
The game today is literally to shoot each other. So what's the point in taking this moral high ground?
Well, they're my friends. I don't really want to hurt them.
Okay, so you were literally Pomni in your gun story, Lars. Oh, they would have all been terrified if I had gone full Pomni. When Pomni's like, I've entered my villain arc. Unbeknownst to all you guys, I do know how to use guns. You only thought I didn't. So as far as coming back to what Lord McGurk said about how the characters in the case of the Amazing Digital Circus are supposed to be the most real things. You have right here, you've got Jax being like, hey, just embrace the fantasy. We're literally just supposed to shoot each other. And we know we can't die, so why are you bothering taking the moral high ground? And for Pomni, it is, well, they're my friends. I don't want to do anything that's going to jeopardize that particular relationship with any of them. And so what you have right here, you've got Jax trying to go into the fantasy, completely escape, which is understandable. That's realistic. Is that something that so many of us do? But what Pomni's doing is even more realistic, where she's like, hey, look, this might be a game, but the relationships are real. The people are real. And we're definitely going to feel these bullets when they hit. So, yeah, you know what, Jax, this is really more your thing, not really my thing. I'm here as the emotional support to make sure that you don't go off the rails and start trying to eat people again like you did last episode. Is basically what you've got. It's basically what you've got going on here. T again says, I feel like this scene was meant to give us a peek into Jax's mindset. TV count, you are absolutely right. No doubt cause of what happened to Ribbit, especially with that scene. Ah, yes, yes, with Ribbit or with Froggy, we are getting some really good hints of how Jax was probably responsible for what happened. So continuing on.
All right, let me be real here. Why do you care about that?
About not hurting my friends?
Look, I know what it's like. One day you're somebody in the real world doing important things.
Okay, so real quick right here, I'm just going to say this: if and this is again something to kind of build off of the dynamic between fantasy and realism that's happening in the show, especially in this moment. If someone's got a revolver, a pretty high caliber revolver like that right there, and they go to fire, for one thing, there's going to be recoil. We don't see the recoil. That's something that a lot of shows get wrong. Whatever. I'm not going to get chuffed. I'm not going to be unchuffed about it. But if you fire a gun, the barrel is going to be hot because you've had a miniature explosion and friction going through that thing, and metal absorbs the heat. So when Jax goes to grab the gun, as he does, if this were a real gun, then he would be sizzled. And we see how Pomni actually does properly use the gun, yet the can doesn't get blown away. And so it's kind of like, wait a second, what's going on here? It's a can. It's a hollow can. It should have been punched right off the podium with a nice big bullet hole in it. What exactly is going on here? Things are not really things are not really realistic. And that's what Jax is trying to point out. None of this is real. So why are you treating it as though it's real, Pomni?
And then the next, you're just a weird little cartoon jester. You want to hold on to that part of you that still thinks it's part of that world. But in the end, what does it get you? Ragatha tries to be all nice and friendly, but she gets torn up every other adventure. Whether we like it or not, all we are now is a bunch of cartoon characters. So what's the point of pretending we're not?
All right, so coming back to the dynamic of realism versus fantasy in the show, and specifically in this scene, Jax makes a very compelling point about how they were all real, how they're trying to hold on to something, but really holding onto who you were and your humanity, was that really matter in a world that constantly chews you up and then spits you back out? As he says, we're literally cartoon characters, and he demonstrates that by aiming perfectly, even though he should not have that ability whatsoever, and blasts the can away. It's a bad trick shot, and yet he lands it. Why? Because he's a cartoon. Because if you decide to embrace the cartoon aspect of this world, you start becoming way more capable than you would be otherwise, which is what Pomni begins to experience right here. But at the same time, as we've discussed earlier, Jax's perspective on all of this comes from a very unhealthy, negative place. And as a result, it's not the right kind of mindset to have while in the digital circus. Then he says, even in the Amazing Digital Circus universe, the anthropomorphic animals still go through so much. Froggy is dead, and Toxic Bunny Boy over here is having a huge mental breakdown. That much deserved. Rabbit, Frog, and Bunny. All right.
We're still people, though, right?
I thought we were at first, but as time goes on, we just end up falling into our archetypes. Become part of the machine.
What's your archetype, then? The villain?
Listen, I add a key dynamic. I see how far I can push things. I screw with people, and I break the fourth wall. You want to know why? It's because it's funny. I do everything because it's funny. Because I'm the funny one.
The funny one?
Yeah. Ragatha's the cheerful one, Gangle's the sad one, Kinger's the crazy one, Zubal's the grumpy one, and you are the one who hasn't figured that out yet. We all just became our...
Yeah, Jax does have a tail in this episode. He's got his tail back. I so pointed that out correctly. maybe he pestered Kane to bring it back. I'm the Deadpool, Pomni. Yes, yeah. Jax wants so badly to be Deadpool. Can he be Deadpool? Can he really pull that off? I don't really think so. And again, right here, this is Jax trying to impose his fantasy onto all of these other very real characters. And I'll just say this, like pulling on my own angsty time in high school, as someone who clearly remembers the angsty boy that he was back in high school, angsty teenage Lars would identify with Jax way too well and agree with Jax way too much, which is not good. The thing is that as I've grown up and as I've gotten to know people better, know the world better, I can recognize Jax's well-argued position as a falsehood because that's exactly what it is, because we are so much more than just archetypes. Again, Jax uses the archetype argument to try to assuage his feelings. TV account, was he trapped here as a minor? We don't know how old he was when he got trapped. We just know that he was a younger guy. And we don't know who's younger, really, Jax or Pomni. But, yeah, Jax is definitely younger. Jax explained embracing the cartoon aspects and logistics of the world. Sort of gave me the whole Who Framed Roger Rabbit vibes. Very good pickup right there on that. Mimic, I really like the scene. As it sort of starts showing Jax hiding his real emotions, it all really starts here. It absolutely does. There's so much happening in the scene, not just in the dialogue-wise, but in the actions and everything, and how Jax is getting into this character more so than he has ever done in any other episode, because he is trying to convince not only Pomni, but himself. Once upon a time, Mr. Lars was Mr. Jars. Michael Kovac does an amazing job with that speech. I agree, Tyler. Michael did a phenomenal job with this moment. Probably, we only know that he was the youngest, but not exactly how much from what I gather. Yeah, exactly, Fabio. We don't know by how much, or even if he was or if we are referencing that he was the youngest when he got in, or if he is younger than Pomni. We're missing, again, key details. Michael's such a great voice actor. He really did a great job with Jax's breakdown and really gives Jax the emotion intended. He did. Dang it, he killed it. If Michael Kovac was a D&D player, I would love to see him get invited on to Critical Role for like 1 or 2 episodes. That would be a blast. Anyways, continuing on, because we're not yet done with the scene.
I at least have the self-awareness to choose who I am.
The funny one.
So who do you want to be? No better chance than now to try something new. You want to go nuts? You want to finally work off those weeks of rage and anguish that have been building up inside you? I know you hate it here. Everyone does. But the silver lining is you can pretty much do whatever you want. Like, look at the way you're aiming that gun. Too realistic.
So, already, I'm going to pull this back just a little bit right here. He brings it up. Look how you're holding the gun. Realistically, that is how you should hold the gun. One hand along the handle, one hand underneath, grabbing it, elbows bent so that way you can better absorb the recoil when you squeeze the trigger, and holding the gun up to have that perfect line of sight, not lower, not higher, because that sucks, and you lose control of the gun. As he says, realistically holding the gun, Pomni's got good form. She should take her finger off the trigger. That's bad. But other than that, she's got the right form for handling the gun. It's realistic. But as Jax is trying to impress, you're not in the real world anymore. So why bother living it? Let me pull this back just a little bit. So
Been building up inside you?
Get it again.
I know you hate it here. Everyone does. But the silver lining is you can pretty much do whatever you want. Like, look at the way you're aiming that gun. Too realistic. Just let loose.
There she goes. The way, like her, like the whole spin, the whole spin, how she did the whole hip hop, and then she holds the gun. She's actually pointing towards the floor, not at the can. She's actually pointing towards the floor as she holds the gun, and it gun at the wrong angle, and yet she hits. What this scene does, and like, this is honestly a brilliant scene, because not only are because ultimately the big thing is getting insights into who Jax is and why he acts the way that he does, and setting up his mental breakdown at the end of the episode. But it also gives us important world building. That if you just give into the role, if you give into the game, if you buy into the fantasy, you can start bending the rules and doing whatever you want, which is what Kane promised at the beginning of the show. So 6 episodes in, we now have a better understanding, which, again, if this understanding is actually applied more by the other characters, not just by Kinger, who's going insane, but really by someone like Pomni, we might be able to see them really beginning to fight back against the confines of the circus, and possibly leading to them finding a way out. So that I think is very important. And Jax probably doesn't realize that he just gave Pomni a very critical world building key to help her out. Again, this scene is great because it's doing a lot of heavy lifting, which is something that you want to see in well-written moments, well-written interactions, well-written scenes, well-written chapters, is that they do a lot of work, introducing ideas, providing world building, providing character insights, character interactions, character growth, plot progression, all happening with one conversation while spinning a gun and shooting 2 cans. Mick says, I believe Pomni's 25 while Jax is 22 and Ragatha is in her 30s. Pomni also revealed last episode that she was 25 years old in the bar scene. Yeah, so we got Pomni's age. Fabio, I watched the Brazilian dub. I tend to rewatch them in English, but I haven't yet. So I'll instead have to give props to the Brazilian Jax voice. He did real damn good. Well, fantastic. And yeah, kudos to really all the voice actors who I know give it their all. And Glitch invests to get the right kind of people. So Jax is the youngest here, along with Gangle, I think. So Jax is the youngest here. Pot, yeah, probably. Tigerman says the fact that the episode is almost 34 minutes, so 33 minutes and 54 seconds. That makes this the longest episode ever. And the answer is yeah, it is. And it needed that. And that's one of the things that indie animation has the freedom to do. It can change the length way better than syndicated shows, because there's no producers or advertisers to tell them no. There's no schedulers for the television stations to tell them no. As a result, they can do whatever they need to do to communicate the story with the resources that they've got. Our standard animation episode is 22 minutes. Exactly, yeah. And they actually do a pretty good job with the Amazing Digital Circus of sticking to the nearly 22 minutes. They usually do. So yeah, so nearly double the length it's nearly double the length for a TV episode. Yeah. Yep. They went above and beyond, and especially consider this, that the 22 minutes for most other shows includes an opening number and a far longer closing number than what the Amazing Digital Circus has. So the Amazing Digital Circus is actually better using its time. And the Matterlad has arrived. Woohoo! Hello, everyone. All right, now then, let's see here. Let me then find another quote unquote a realistic. And the conversation between Zubul and Gangle is great, but I want to pull up this one right here with Kinger, because this is not only is this an absolutely hilarious moment, but also because in the middle of the high action and the humor, there's a moment of realism that actually heightens the action and the comedy. And we'll see why that is. TV account says, I think networks force them to make shows short so it's fair broadcasting. Yes, and so they got plenty of time for all their advertisements. How is everyone feeling after this episode? Marilad asks. I'm right behind you, aren't I? Yes. I love that line. This episode has got me feeling all kinds of things, but mostly I'm like, that was a good episode. It's really good, and I'm really looking forward to just rewatching it again, just taking more of it in. And 22 minutes aligns with Jax's age being 22. All right, so here we go with the scene. Let's hear. We'll play through the scene, and we'll see if you guys can find the realistic moments, such as it is. Here we go.
Where Nutso went before we can rest easy.
I'm right behind you, aren't I?
And you get a whole... You basically get Pulp Fiction right there. Man, look at Kinger just... Kinger was in the dark, and yet he done good. Yep.
Whoops, sorry.
Oh, man, Jax, you did the wrong thing, man. All right, so I'm going to stop right there. Did you guys catch the realistic moment? Put it there into the chat of this ridiculous dark room firefight. What is the most realistic thing that actually happens? And as fun as it is, I'm going to say one of the funnest things that's not realistic is how Kinger is there just like hitting the hammer of his gun and just like firing off like a machine gun. As much as we'd like to think that that's possible, guns just don't work that way. Bobby, a realistic moment, Kinger with the lighter, or it's that guy standing there in plain sight. So you count Kinger reloading the gun, Kinger reloading. I have to say the reloading. Yes, reloading is the moment. And also that he's using a lighter there in the dark as he's trying to reload his gun. So I'm going to rewind it and we're going to go back and we're going to watch it again. But I'm just going to say this, and we'll see if you guys agree with me after we watch it again. The reason why that realistic moment works so well to help like elevate the comedy of the situation is that thus far, even though they've talked about ammo and everything, we actually haven't seen them really having to reload. Yes, there's been moments of reloading, like when Zubo like cocks the sniper rifle and you see the spent shell go flying out. But like we haven't actually seen someone be like, "Oh my gosh, I've run out of bullets! Quickly, put them in!" Anyone who's ever played a shooter game against other people knows that reloading sucks. Anyone who's ever done paintball or airsoft also knows that it really, really sucks to have to reload the gun, especially because you're normally having to reload in the middle of the worst action possible. And so Kinger's holding his own, and then he's got to reload, and because he's reloading with the lighter on, yeah, he doesn't get the chance. And so there's the comedy. That's what it hits. Like, what? You got to reload now? And no. So let's see what you guys think. Did it really help to elevate the humor of the scene, or is this just Lars talking it up way too much? So let me pull back the moments, and we'll watch it again.
Let's not forget we're here to kill people. We still need to find out where Nutso went before we can rest easy.
I'm right behind you, aren't I?
Right, so the scene wouldn't feel the same without it. Absolutely.
There he is!
Whoops, sorry.
I mean, you can also say it's pretty realistic to accidentally shoot one of your own compatriots in the dark, because yeah, shooting in the dark is not a smart thing to do. Uh, also, coming back to Grandpa teaching me lessons. This was one lesson that I was not expecting. Like way later, when he into him teaching me how to use guns, he's like, Lars, if you ever find yourself in a situation where you're getting chased by someone and you've got a gun, don't bother aiming, just unload the magazine. If you find yourself alone in a room with a person who wants to hurt you and you've got a gun, just unload the magazine. I'm like, well, what? And he's like, trust me, this will help you out. I'm like, okay. Like, I don't intend to ever be in a situation like that. And so, well, watching the scene, I'm like the one thing that all of them should have done, and it would have worked out better for them in the end, is just spray and pray, just unload. Props to the voice actors of the show. They really poured their hearts and souls into voicing these characters. Michael especially amazing in this latest episode. It sounded like he really panicked. So that's what I said. TV count. What? Exactly what? Personally, I feel the exact same emotionally, and I'm interested in what happens and what we miss. Fabio, and this is advanced VR shooter. Tactical reload. Swap out the mag with a mag with more bullets when you're not in combat. Exactly. The scene wouldn't feel the same without Kinger having to stop to load. Exactly. Like the again, it plays up the humor and the intensity of the scene. The moment you realize, oh, they're not shooting with infinite bullets, like they actually have to be tactical there in the moments, and which then leads basically to Kinger doing his crazy thing here, where he's like, okay, I'm just going to ricochet the bullet and hope I hit you.
I hope you guys are ready for my ricochet super move!
Oh, here's the light.
Huh.
High five!
Yeah!
So there we go. That's what Gangle and Zubul did, and it worked well. Yep, yeah. Gangle and Zubul were actually doing really, really well. When watching the episode, I was like, why are they running down that dumb hallway? Like, they should have been in a way better fortified position. You don't get up and move unless you absolutely have to move. And Zubul had excellent sniper position. It was just bad move, man. Bad move. And he says it'd be interesting if at the very end of the series, when they reveal real human versions of these characters, that's actually the voice actors themselves. That would be awesome. Lord McGurk says, I love how Jax misses Kinger hiding in plain sight. It's like how when we think something would be too obvious, so we don't check it, and it's funny. Exactly. Again, it just heightens the humor. Like, what, you guys didn't stop to think, oh wait, who's the person over there with the lighter? And he's not behind good cover either. Oh boy. Let's see here. Any other realistic moment I want to quickly grab up from this episode here. I would love to take the time to really go over Jax's freak out moment, but that would take quite a bit of time because there's just so much going on there. So I'll hold off on that, I think. And let's switch the gears. Since we're talking about realism, let's switch the gears on over to the slideshow. And I got to make sure that I actually get this. Yes, upload it. Come on, give it to me. Making your stories feel realistic. But yeah, this latest episode was great. It was really great. And I definitely need to also rewatch it again because at the same time that I was watching it, I was also helping to babysit. And so I was like, so much is going on. All right. Making your story feel realistic. Tiagon says, "Can you believe I'm watching this while doing groceries? LOL." Oh, I can believe it. I've also listened to some crazy things while doing my grocery shopping. All right, our lesson goal is this. We want to learn the value of realism and how it can lift a totally fantastical story to even greater heights. It's important to note, and this goes for every fictional story. Goes for every fictional story. The audience must suspend their disbelief, meaning they have to buy into the adventure that you're inviting them to go along. This goes for every story. This goes for the Monarch Mercenaries, which is the artwork that you see there on your screen. That goes for the Amazing Digital Circus. That goes for Murder Drones. And the more fantastical the story gets, the more it needs something that is realistic, that is then reliable to the audience, that they can understand it, that they can grasp it. So they can say, hey, look, I have no idea what's going on right now, but I know that these characters are real. Therefore, I will go along with the story because I have a point of reference that makes sense to me. And for everything else, I suspend my disbelief. Take me on your adventure. So, for instance, with the Amazing Digital Circus and even with Murder Drones, and in fact, I would actually argue even more so with Murder Drones, those kinds of stories must have realistic characters, aka relatable characters. So what happens with Murder Drones? We are introduced right off the bat to angsty teenage girl Uzi. She's a robot. None of us are autonomous robots living on a planet consumed with a nuclear winter. None of us are. I'm pretty certain of that. And so the entire story is just fantastical. It's so over the top. How then do you buy into it? By having a character who feels relatable like Uzi. Maybe you're not an angsty teenage girl, but you know what it's like to maybe be abandoned. Maybe you don't get along with your parents just like Uzi does. Maybe you've been ostracized like Uzi has been. Maybe you feel like the odd duck. Happens to so many of us. As a result, Uzi is relatable. And so she becomes your anchor point because that's real. With the Amazing Digital Circus, the Amazing Digital Circus is an interesting one because it's really hard to actually get into the characters in the first episode. The first episode really relies a whole lot on you buying into the premise without really anchoring you in things that are truly relatable and reliable. Like, Pomni acts as much like a normal person as she possibly can, given the situation. So as a result, you might call her like an anchor point. But by the end of episode 2, the characters definitely feel way more realistic. And so the audience can absolutely latch onto them and thereby suspend their disbelief for all the crazy shenanigans for the remaining episodes because they can rely on the relatable / realistic characterization of characters like Pomni, Kinger, Gangle, Zubul, Ragatha, Jax. And so that is very, very important. And depending on the story that you want to tell, and this comes back to something that I believe it was TV Account who asked this earlier about there's a spectrum for realistic versus fantastical. You can be as fantastic as you want. Again, think Murder Drones. There's actually very little in Murder Drones that is immediately relatable to the audience. The same thing with the Amazing Digital Circus. But so long as the characters feel realistic in some kind of way, meaning that they make sense to us, they are relatable, and their actions make sense within this wacky alien world, okay, sure. I accept that. I will suspend my disbelief for everything else. The more realistic you make your story, the less the audience needs to suspend their disbelief to swallow all of the fantastical stuff. So the less fantastical, the easier it is to hold on to your audience. The more fantastical, the more realistic you need to make certain aspects of your story. There's a trade-off there. There's a very important trade-off that you need to understand in order to maintain that suspension of disbelief. And the thing is that if you go way too fantastical, if you establish something as realistic, such as, let's say, the nature of gravity, gravity works, woohoo. But then, like 3 chapters or 3 episodes later, gravity no longer matters. That really can break the immersion for the audience. A good example being something like Bleach. Bleach introduces you to teenagers fighting demons. Okay, I can accept that. And it takes place in modern day Japan, so we can center ourselves that this makes sense. But then later on, when characters start walking in the air, you're like, what the heck? What do you mean? Why weren't we doing this sooner? What's going on here? Does anything matter now? And so then it becomes then the show's responsibility to explain why the laws of gravity can be broken without simply kicking you out of the story. So that's something to consider as an author, as a creator. Madeline says, I remember watching and Pomni turned around with the gun. I thought it would cut to Pomni pointing at herself for a reason I can't remember. Oh, you mean like at the end? Oh boy. You know, we might come back to that later on and talk about that because yikes. In episode 1, I really felt Pomni reacted real typical of characters in her position, though reacting in other ways would add in a real person sense. Her in calmer scenes in later episodes kept me. And that's a very good thing to point out there, Fabio. Especially how characters adapt and react, so long as that's relatable and realistic, given the context. That's important. That is very, very important. So, what does it mean to make your story realistic? Realistic does not mean making your story darker, bloodier, more violent, or more sexual. It does not. It does not. It annoys the snot out of me when people say, well, there's more sex, therefore the story's realistic. No, it's not. Have you ever gone and read books out of the romance section of the bookstore? Yikes. Those are simply mature themes and elements. Maturity is not the same as realism. For instance, innocent children playing and communicating without understanding each other is just as real as anything dark, bloody, and sexual. Absolutely. Remember that even very good and wholesome stuff is real as well. Don't jade yourself into thinking that wholesome stuff doesn't exist in real life. It absolutely does. It is realistic. Instead, you should think along these lines. Writing realistic characters, scenes, and world building means that they are recognizable as situations, people's events, and things that you are assured to come across in everyday life. Realities like gravity, death, love, the beauties of daybreak, political corruption versus idealism, and really anything else that's very everyday, like going shopping, that's real. That's what helps to make a story realistic. Fabio, you hear that? Maine the Boys comic book creator? Exactly. The Boys is not necessarily realistic. It's just mature. It's got some realistic elements, but it's far more mature than it is realistic. Marilyn, I would like to point out in episode 6, Jax doesn't lay a finger on Pomni and only did on accident when a stray shot hit her in the dark. When Pomni fought him, he looked scared and betrayed. Exactly. And Marilyn, we were talking about this earlier. Basically, I would argue that the reason why Jax doesn't fight back is because he wants Pomni to off him as a sense of penance for the stuff that he's done, but also to help reaffirm his assumed archetype and identity within the Digital Circus. He's the annoying Jack kind of character who does things for the humor, for his own amusement. And the moment that you make him have to do something against someone that he really cares about, that shatters his perception. And that's what happens. Pomni doesn't kill him. And as a result, it does not reaffirm how he views himself. That's very important. I also thought Pomni was about to self-terminate. I do not under any way circumstances encourage that, but the story writing potential, I think that would have hurt Jax to watch. It would have. And I was thinking that I honestly thought that she was going to go the same way, that she was just going to bite the bullets. I was like, that's intense. And then come to see when the camera then turns around, that's not the case. Like, she's just distraught. She's distraught at being in the situation that she finds herself in. Again, very realistic, very relatable. Holy cow, that was excellent writing. So let's look at some other examples. I mean, we've already been talking about guns throughout tonight, but let me reemphasize some things. Guns are heavy. Guns are loud. Guns have kick when you fire them. They do not have infinite ammo. Bullets are small and need to be aimed properly in order to hit their targets. Silencers do not silence your guns. They do not. And guns get hot and they can misfire. Safety is key, and swinging your gun around like Pomni does will get you hurt. It will cause problems. Now, big question we have to ask ourselves, because I mean, this is a fantasy situation. We even see in the scene where Jax is like, you have to buy into the fantasy, and then you will be able to shoot way better. Why then does it matter? Why should we care about the realism for this? The interesting thing is that the amazing Digital Circus actually answered why the guns work differently. It gave the world building answer because it's how you perceive things. But in other stories that are not the amazing Digital Circus, where you don't have the power of the mind affecting how your guns work, you then have it actually behooves you to show how guns actually work, what the realities of handling a firearm are like. Sure, you can still have your trick shots and whatnot, but here's the thing, is that when characters show how they can realistically use guns, it actually makes the trick shots way more awesome. Like, oh crud, I hate when I forget names. I'm so bad at names. Let me just double check. Yes, Annie Oakley. If you don't know who Annie Oakley is, I highly recommend checking her out. She is awesome. She was a performing gun artist in the Wild West show, in Buffalo Bill's Wild West show. And everyone was shocked, not just because she was a woman doing all these incredible shots, but because she was doing the incredible shots. Maybe more so because she was a woman doing the incredible shots. But the thing is that a lot of the people who went to the Wild West show knew how to use guns. A lot of them are veterans of wars. They've used guns. So to see someone using a gun in a really cool way while still being very safe with that gun was just awe-inspiring to them. When you as a writer can show that you know what guns realistically do, and you incorporate that actually speaks to way more of your audience than you might think. And it makes what your characters then do with those guns all the more interesting and even exceptional. And as Meg says, guns can also hurt your eardrums too. Exactly. Which is why it helps when you write a scene with guns. If you've got bullets zipping and pinging off of stuff that they're not supposed to, the roar of the guns deafens everyone, and you find it harder to understand what's going on. It can be very disorienting if you don't have proper ear protection. You will get a headache if you don't have proper ear protection while using a firearm. All those things, especially if they're using a bigger gun, how that might be really heavy. And so it's harder after a long time to continuously use that gun. So yeah, Fabio, I think as it seems, not much gun use seems to be in my stuff. So I'd want to make them realistic, but in that Dragon Ball Z sense, or it comes off powers can enhance guns. So it depends on how you want to use it, Fabio. I mean, this is just one example right here. But again, like, it's not that you have to be realistic with guns, but being more realistic with guns, actually understanding how they work and incorporating that into your story can actually help to heighten the stakes pretty well. I'm Omega. Sorry, I was out for something. What did I miss? You missed quite a bit. Talking about all different things in regards to story of how I almost got shot. Um, Jax's mental breakdown. What he was probably what we can learn from certain scenes. The humor in Kinger having to reload his gun, which is realistic, and then us now coming in and talking about realism within storytelling. Now that so before I get to this next one, I do need to bring up another video for you guys. This will be important right here. This will help set us up for the next one. Right, for the next example.
For him to jump back again. I was left alone while he waited for the bridge to lock down.
What if you need to poop?
Well, I put my back to the chasm and laid about me with my sword, intending to... Wait, what did you say?
Poop. You're out there on the battlefield, encased in metal like a crab in its shell. What do you do if nature calls?
That is not something any woman has ever asked me before.
Okay, I'll play this again. This is actually a scene from the Stormlight Archive from Book 2, Words of Radiance, where Shallan is meeting with her with the man who is supposed to become her fiance, later her husband, Adolin, and they're trying to get to know each other. They don't really know each other. Adolin is being the typical dude, talking about all of his amazing exploits in the war and how he is a hero, because he is a hero. And Shallan is like, this is boring. How do you poop when you are in full plate armor? Hey, Hannah Heaven is here. Woohoo! Glad you can finally make it.
That made it dangerous for him to jump back again. I was left alone while he waited for the bridge to lock down.
What if you need to poop?
Well, I put my back to the chasm and laid about me with my sword, intending to... Wait, what did you say?
Poop. You're out there on the battlefield, encased in metal like a crab in its shell. What do you do if nature calls?
That is not something any woman has ever asked me before.
She's a keeper. She is a keeper. I love Shallan. Folks are dumb. Where I come from, they ain't having any learned, and still they're happy as can be about doing what comes naturally. All right, so armor. Armor is heavy, and that's the point. Swords and axes don't rend armor with a single hit. They're not supposed to. When in like old school, like not old school fantasy, but like actually in old school fantasy, like in the original epics told in song by the Vikings, or in old images from the medieval times, when they show someone like cutting through armor, that is them being all like, yes, someone was really freaking strong, or it's propaganda. It's either truth or lie, and if it's truth, that person was a beast, because good armor deflects blows. That's its whole point. If it didn't work, armor would not have existed for millennia. It did because it worked. That's something that we need to appreciate more in our writing. Other things you should appreciate is that armor does restrict your movement because it's got to completely encase you, especially in this instance. And good armor is tailored to the wearer. You can't just simply put it on no matter who you are. I'm looking at you, Dungeons and Dragons. You got to tailor the armor in order for it to fit properly. But here's some things that we got to accept. Even when guns were introduced to the battlefield, tactics and some specialized suits of armor were used to mitigate guns' effectiveness until the guns just became too powerful. When you know the history of armor, when you know how armor works, you as a creator can incorporate that to actually make some really intense scenes. And here's the thing is that we often think, well, if their life isn't immediately in danger, then where's the drama? Where are the stakes? But the thing is that armor, while it provides many advantages, also has some disadvantages, like like restricted movement or restricted fields of vision thanks to your visor, or other things. Let's say someone's got magical armor, like in the Stormlight Archive. Awesome. What if that magic begins to run out? Suddenly, that suit of armor doesn't work anymore. Or like in the Monarch Mercenaries, for Captain Carsonius, he's got various suits of armor. Awesome. But that armor can still be hurt or damaged, and if that's the case, it leaves him exposed, meaning he's got to swap out armor as the story goes on. So there's all kinds of things that happen, that there's all kinds of things that you can incorporate within your story that can provide some interesting limitations to counterbalance the effectiveness that armor naturally brings. As a result, it keeps the audience kind of on the edge of their seat, like, when will the armor run out of its magic fuel? When will someone realize the chink in the armor? When will that person not realize, because they've got their visor on, that the big hulking farmer with his cudgel is coming from the side and is about to ring this dude's bell? It might not kill him in one blow, but if you get smacked over the back of the head with a cudgel, I don't care if you're wearing a helmet, you're still going to the ground. You're not going to be dead, and you might only have a light concussion, but your bell's been rung, and it gives your enemy a chance to dogpile you, to find a weakness. So that's something to consider when writing something like armor. And this is just an example right here. It's not that your story must have armor, but so many writers are just like, yeah, armor, who cares? Armor is just there to look cool, and then it doesn't serve any purpose. But if you make armor realistic and actually serve the purpose that's supposed to, it in no way detracts from the fun action of your story. Let's see here. Anime says, weren't armor flexible and light enough to move? Depends on the armor. The thing is that like for a full suit of armor right here, they're not. To give a point of comparison, if you were to wear full plated armor with the whole shebang, with leather, with either like a thick tunic or thick leathers or whatnot underneath, along with chainmail, you're looking to wearing about 25 to 30 extra pounds. It's heavy but doable. A firefighter who goes into battle against fires today wears at least twice as much weight on their body than knights did during the medieval era in full regalia. Something to think about. Firefighters go into battle with fires wearing more on their person than knights did back in the medieval times. Firefighters have, however, different kinds of armor because they're not fighting people, but they're fighting fires. So their gear has to give them the mobility as well as the protection and the insulation to go into raging infernos and survive. So it does depend on the type of armor. There's different types of armor depending on the era as well. And that's really good to bring up, I'm Omega. But just thinking, for instance, massive plate armor. Plate armor is going to absorb the hits. It is still heavy. You will feel it. You will absolutely feel it. But if you're someone who's wearing it, you like having it on because it's going to protect you. He says, and yet you're not almost immobilized in armor either. I've heard some stuff go way too much in the other way too. Yes, armor should not fully restrict your movement because, again, that would make you absolutely ineffectual on the battlefield. But it does restrict your movements. You can't do jumping. You can't do usually proper jumping jacks in certain suits of armor. If you're just wearing chainmail and the likes, absolutely. Lauren McGurk, I like it. I like when shows actually portray how chainmail is meant to be used. Chainmail is a lightweight armor designed to protect against slashes and not stabbing or arrows. Bingo was his name. Fabio, heavy, you could do a backflip in it. I've seen videos of that, but that would tire you out way more, of course. Flexible, still heavy is what I understood. Madeline, I'm back and somehow was an hour behind without knowing. Ooh, boy. Lauren McGurk, it's different from plate armor, where it's designed to be all-purpose, which makes it heavy. But chainmail is good in situations where there are many swords and not many daggers or bows. And it being lightweight allows the swordman to move easier. Absolutely. And again, you do your research into different types of armor, and you realize you've got a lot of freedom to to get really creative with how your battles are going to play out. That's nice. Don't be like Hollywood, where Hollywood thinks either the armor is too restrictive or too worthless. Armor existed for millennia because it worked and because it allowed people to do the job without being too restricted. And different types of armor for different types of cultures and different types of situations. So hey. Now then, I gotta take a quick dig at Don Machi because I hate Bell Crenell's armor, and I realized that I put the X over his torso so well that it's hard to realize. But he doesn't even have a full breastplate. He's got a half breastplate. That thing will not protect him at all. Yes, he's got bracers. Whoop-de-flip-and do, and he's got knee pads. In a real fight, not anime, that armor is awful. Swap out. Keep the knee pads and the bracers, but take off that stupid breastplate and either get yourself some chainmail or get some gamison or get more plate armor. Get proper plate armor that covers you, because sure, that thing might be over his heart, but guess what? His gut is exposed. His intestines are exposed. His rib, his sides, his hips are all exposed. Yeah, he can be hit all over the place and not only be immobilized, but be critically and mortally wounded, if not outright killed in one blow. Yikes. So I fought people who wore armor before. Those guys are absolute tanks. Yeah, you shown us the video on Discord, which is amazing. So stories don't need to give everyone plate armor, especially when it's a sword fight. Yes. I mean, armor is literally just pieces of metal put on top of people at base level. I used to watch a series where someone would rate fancy armors based on how practical they are. Usually with the girls, there was just easily not enough. It was a common issue with men too. Exactly, yeah. There was also a meme that I did consider putting in here about the fantasy armor versus the realistic armor, and how the fancy armor is just so over the top and impractical. You'd basically have your knees getting locked with the phalanges coming out of your boots that you don't need. All right. Then we've got economics. This is my last example for the evening. There's no such thing as infinite money. If you do try to print infinite money, you get inflation. Prices should matter because they affect everyone. If your characters have to go and buy some food, then they should be paying the price that everyone else pays, even if they've got more money. They might be like, oh, wow, that's actually really expensive. Or, wow, that's really cheap. Prices affect everyone. You can have opulence, but opulence costs you money. Wealth, depressions, inflations, recessions are all real and have effects on the people around your main characters. And another thing to consider, cash has weight and gets heavier the more you have. So the more cash your character is carrying, the more they're going to be bogged down over time. It gets heavy. Man, I'll just say this. Economics do not need to be a dominant force within your story at all. In fact, I would say that in most stories, you probably don't need to go into economics, and that's A-okay. But where you use them, it needs to be realistic. It needs to make sense. Every isekai ever. I'm poor. Time to use my OP powers to kill the most valuable creature ever to get rich. Oh, I hate that so much. Or you want to know the other dumb one? And this happens in so many manhwa, is where it's all like, wow, I'm poor. So let me go and let me find like this jade rock, and now I'm like flipping rich all of a sudden. Or let me go get this special credit card, and then boom, suddenly I've got access to so much money. And it's just dumb. It's just dumb. If you're going to make money a part of the story, it needs to matter. And so let me actually give an example, not dealing with Isekai with Mama, where it's already broken from the get-go. Let me do one of my favorite pastimes to take a jab at George R. Martin. And I'm going to compare Game of Thrones to Mistborn. If you know what you're looking at right now at the screen, you're actually looking at the coins from the Mistborn world, the boxings. Now, the reason why this is important to bring up is that in the Game of Thrones series, life is cheap. People will murder each other. So one of the reasons why I can say life is cheap is that you realize within the first 20 chapters of the first book that the kingdoms, the 7 kingdoms, are racked with inflation. With just like one festival alone, not the Targaryens, but the Baratheons. The Baratheons have borrowed like 2 million gold coins from the Lannisters to pay for a single tournament. That's ridiculous. If you actually go into for instance, into the War of the Roses, which the Game of Thrones series is supposed to be based on, 2 million gold coins alone basically paid for like half of the War of the Roses. Tens of thousands of men fighting each other for years. 2 million gold coins for a single tournament? What the heck? Inflation. Your gold is worth pennies. And so when you find out that people will go and shank a random stranger or a nobleman for a single gold coin, that's like saying, hey, you know what? I want you to go murder the president. Here's a penny. And the person's like, oh boy, a whole penny. Shank, shank, shank. That's just dumb. What that then tells you is that life in this world doesn't matter. And if the life in this world doesn't matter, if it's so cheap, why should I care about any of the characters? When your money has no value, and yet your characters place so much value on the money, that means that the characters that you're writing are just as worthless. That is what you are subconsciously communicating to your audience. On top of that, when you start adding in all of this other stuff about like, okay, so the economy works this way, so much money was borrowed, this is what so much was paid for, so on and so forth. What you begin to find is that if you treat money so flippantly like you do in Game of Thrones, then it gets to a point where we were like, man, this series is so realistic. I'm like, no, it isn't. No, it isn't. Every single flipping person is able to hire an entire army with just some gold. Logistics don't matter. And George R. R. Martin's like, I write so intelligently. What is Aragorn's tax policy? Well, George R. R. Martin, I would like to know what your tax policy is for the Game of Thrones series because you never wrote it. On top of that, your money doesn't make any sense because, again, life has come so cheap. Money means nothing within your story. You're going to say, oh my gosh, a Valyrian steel blade is so expensive. Well, tell me what expensive means in this world, for crying out loud, when a single tournament costs 2 million gold coins. Meine Güte. Fabio, it can be nice to have a scene where the main character's like, boy, what is steel exactly? Yeah, oh my gosh, I saved some money. Now, let me compare that, my little rant right there, to Mistborn, where money, again, thinking about what money tells us about the characters, about the world, becomes very important. We've got Vin, who's a street merchant. She lives basically on like a couple of boxings, a couple of coins, like a month. She's in squalor. She has to survive thanks to being in a thieving gang. Otherwise, she's not going to really have any money. And most people, the Ska, who are slaves in this world, they basically get like mini boxings to like buy stuff. Like they have almost no money. Most people in this world don't have money if you are part of the 90% ska population. You have very, very little. And so for the people so that's something that means, like, okay, so who's really wheeling and dealing with the money? Oh, it's all the noblemen and basically the really small middle class. They're the ones who are dealing with money. And so for a ska like Vin, oh my gosh, when she's told to like use the coins as effectively bullets because they can magically manipulate the metal to go flying and hit people and just like shred them up as if they're shooting bullets. Like she's like, no, that's money. That's like, do you know how long I could eat with 10 boxings? And Kelsey, her teacher, has to be like, Vin, we've got more boxings. You don't need to worry about it. And the quirk of Vin's through like a third of the book is that whenever she uses the coins for training, she always magically sucks the coins back to her rather than just simply using more coins in her coin pouch, because that's who she is. She's lived in a world where just a handful of coins is the difference between life and death, as opposed to Game of Thrones, where it's like a life is just simply worth a single gold coin, which is worth a penny. It's dumb. But with Mistborn, it's made more intelligent. And the other thing is that Brandon Sanderson, as he was writing the monetary system of the boxings, what you find out is that the whole monetary system is based on the control of a magical substance, atium. So kind of like how our dollar bills or our coins are powered by the credit of the country that we live in, or back in the day, 100 years ago, it would have been by the amount of gold that your country had in reserve. The boxings need to have some sort of worth to them. Like what? Like this isn't Fallout where you're like, hey, I've got some bottle caps. Bottle caps buy me stuff. The coins mean something because they're backed up by something. Back in the day, it used to be that you could take your money, deposit at the bank, and get so much gold in return. These days, you can't do that because your dollars are backed up with credit. So your money just represents what your buying power is supposed to be. But within the world of Mistborn, the boxings represent the amount of atium that a person can buy. And the reason why atium is so precious as opposed to gold is that the atium, when consumed, allows you to see all variations of the future at once. For a moment, you have God's omniscience, which is really, really cool. And it's an awesome power to have, which is why it's the most valuable metal. And so the boxings are a representation of how much atium you could get in exchange for your coins. Economics right there. Already Brandon Sanderson makes more sense than George R. R. Martin across all of the Game of Thrones books. And so a necessary element to actually overthrowing the Lord Ruler and bringing down the entire oppressive system in the Mistborn series is by taking control of the atium reserves and stealing it all. Because when you steal all the atium, that would be like stealing all the gold, and suddenly your country's money means nothing. Or in the case of credit, it would be like your country, and this can happen to any country. If your country defaults on a loan, the country's credit goes out the door, and suddenly your money becomes worthless. So by doing a little bit of research into just economics, if you wish to make economics a part of your story, you can make economics become something that really helps to elevate how your characters act, how your characters feel, the interactions they can have, some of the bigger world building implications of what your characters are doing, all based on the money. But economics is a trickier thing. Again, if you don't want to incorporate economics into your story, you don't have to. It's absolutely fine. All right, let me catch it right here with what Fabio was saying. You know, this is funny. When I thought about a scene where the police go and bust into Edge's cave he lives in, since his spending seems to be too suspicious for a guy who only just recently started training people in the middle of nowhere. I made a whole piece of music for the burst-in, though it was a singular cop visualized in my mind. Hey, but you're thinking, hey, but Fabio, I already like that. Implications of money. Cops are like, wait a second, why is this guy getting so much money when he's only just been working? Something is not right here. Hey, Commoncraft, welcome back. What did you miss? You've missed us transitioning on over into the lesson for tonight. And we're actually coming close to the end of the lesson. Now, here's the thing. It's important to do your research into whatever you want to make your story more realistic. Just because something sounds plausible or did happen once doesn't mean that others see it as real or normal. For example, you can cause methane explosions from cow farts. It's absolutely real. But that doesn't mean that you can turn cows into walking bombs with just a lighter, no matter what the Darwin Awards say. So do your research. Make sure that things make sense if you want to make it more realistic. For instance, in my Monarch Mercenary series, I actually had to I did my research into the powers of gravitation. Can planets get too close? The answer is they can't. If planets get too close, they actually bounce off of each other. It takes a much more powerful gravitational force to cause planets to even get close enough to each other where they might collide. Because on their own, each planet's gravitational force would actually cause them to repel each other like magnets. Interesting, crazy. I don't fully understand it, but I did my research, so I understood that I needed to come up with a magical reason in order for these two planets to be so redonkulously close to each other that they shared the same moon in a tidal locked formation. Because the laws of gravity say that wouldn't work. And so in the Monarch Mercenaries, I have two planets sharing the same moon. They are tidal locked and ripping the moon apart between them. That would happen if the gravitational field was manipulated magically to force two celestial objects of that size to be too close together. Because realistically, they would bounce off of each other. And the characters understand this in the book, so they're like, oh, there's a lot of magic going on here. But we don't know why. And we don't know to what purpose. You, as the reader, though, if you've been reading The Legend of the Ten Lords and you're caught up on that series, and you then read The Monarch Mercenaries, you know exactly who did this. Or at least you have a very good idea of who did it. Now, to what purpose? You kind of discover that as you read through The Monarch Mercenaries. And so, even though I create something that's highly fantastical, such as two planets sharing a moon and being tidal locked, which should not happen, by having characters acknowledge that this normally wouldn't happen, this then gives you some excellent world building insight. Just like Jax explaining to Pomni that she needs to let go of realism and embrace the mind and the archetype in order to more effectively use the gun. So there you go. Fabio, good old writer suspicious Google searches. Ah, yes. Comcraft says, I think it makes sense when you take into account that, as far as I understand, gravity is less of a force and closer to space itself being bent by the mass of a given object. And yes, that's a very good way of putting it, Comcraft, but still, it's one of those things that when people try to just understand that without really going more in depth, they're like, oh, wait, what? How does that work? Lermagurk says it's late now, so I'll be going to bed now. I hope you have a great night. Well, Lermagurk, thank you so much for joining us tonight. It was great having you here once again. Fabio, would it be funny? It would be funny if it's impossible for a solar system to be composed of only giant planets, except for one solid one. That's in one of my things. All right. So here's your writing challenge. I want you to select an element of your story that you want to be more realistic. Do the research to find out what makes that element truly realistic, then figure out how to best incorporate that realism into your story. That being said, I gotta let a cat out. There you go, honey. Be free. Now, I have right here as the image, I have the cover from Bleed, Steam, and Steel, because in Bleed, Steam, and Steel, even like, again, it's a world that, given what it is fairly realistic with how the people act, with the cultures, there's again, there's very, very low magic, and that's only for one particular main character. Otherwise, it's all steam powered. Now then, what obviously breaks realism is these steam powered mech suits called the Paladins. There's no way you could ever make something like that work in real life. It just wouldn't. It can't. But so in exchange then for me saying, hey, look at these awesome steam powered suits, I then say these steam powered suits still have to abide by the laws of physics. So if they're really big, they're going to be heavy and hard to move. It takes a little while to make them move. The person who is piloting them is going to be under a lot of stress while they're within that suit. And they are bound by the laws of momentum. So the more momentum they get, the deadlier they become. But at the same time, if they crash and stop, it could seriously injure the person within the paladin. And so, despite me then having these fantastical suits, there are still real world consequences and physics that go into the movement of those suits. And so it allows me then to do some really fantastical and fun stuff and have some really cool elements, while at the same time not making it so ridiculous that it makes you feel like, wait a second, and why am I reading this schizophrenic book that can't decide if it wants to be an anime or be a down-to-earth steampunk story? It is a grounded steampunk story, probably even more grounded than most other steampunk stories. And it allows it then to really make the choices of the characters feel more real because the world already feels far more real. And so it's easier to buy into the adventure of all these characters. And remember, that's the thing, coming back to it in the very first slide, you need to strike that balance of help the audience to suspend their disbelief while having anchors in realism that allow them to give up their disbelief in favor of your story. So long as there's something you can say, that makes sense, I can believe that, I'm going with it. That's the balance that you have to strike. Conquest says, a concept I want to play with in a fanfic of mine is how vampires that organize themselves past a certain point start to look less like a supernatural infection and more like a criminal organization. That is a really cool concept. Run with it. Another cyberpunk isekai story / fanfic where the isekai is actually a matrix scenario. The real world is a simulation. Fabio, the challenge makes me go to one of my species, merlikes, species of fish that clearly carnivorous, shark teeth, clearly not human, actual human skin, but still looks a lot like mermaids. All skin-looking detailed skin-colored scales. Props to Glitch and Gooseworks for taking a goofy concept like the amazing Digital Circus and making it so hard-hitting and real. Amen. What I need to do to be most realistic, other than how instincts affect them, would be making the descriptions of their natural evolution process the most real I could. Well, awesome. So you're already thinking on some good lines there, Fabio. All right. So you know what? Let's then end, because that's it for the slideshow here. Let's then end tonight with hopping back on over to the amazing Digital Circus. Comcraft, an idea I had a few days ago was a more biologically realistic dragon. It exhales poison gas that ignites with a flint rock because it's a bit more stand than a typical animal. Okay. All right. Yeah. No. You've got that you've got an element of that actually in stories like How to Train Your Dragon, where the a bit more smart than typical animal. Got it. Okay, I see what you're saying, Concraft. But yeah, I mean, you already got something kind of like that with How to Train Your Dragon, where the amount of fire or whatever that the dragons emit is all based on how much gas they've actually stored up in themselves over that day. And once they've used up so much, they have to rest and regenerate that gas within themselves. So let's pop up.
You really can't.
And we'll close out and say, breaking down Jax's whole conversation, I feel like I want to take some time with that before, like, I think it would be cool to actually talk about that in a later live stream. But let's see here. We already had the gunfights. And you know what? Let's actually get a little bit of Jax's conversation here at the end, and then pop on over to what Kinger says to Ragatha, and we'll end it there. Amega says, I've got a concept for an alternative reality game where a group of interdimensional criminals have been camping in an alternate universe downtown Baton Rouge, and a group of heroes have to find them. That sounds awesome. I like that idea. Concraft, that is my inspiration, but I wanted to make it look more visible. How the fire breathing can develop. It was an accidental development that the gas is flammable, and once the dragon figured out the fire trick, it started to become part of their biology with the evolution as they selected for it. Kind of like what crows do. Mimic, also with the incredible direction that the Amazing Digital Circus is taking, along with the chance of Jax abstracting, I kind of do miss the times when the gang was going into that scary haunted house or in Candyland. Exactly. Yeah, we've left the really lighthearted adventures, and we're now getting into the meat and potatoes. Do you think the reason Jax did what he did was because he saw Rabbit's door and gave him flashbacks? I think that helped to fuel a TV account. I think it also went along with that this is the personality that he's cultivated for himself in order to survive in the digital circus. But as we see, it's not healthy, and it's not fallible. He was brought to his breaking point in this episode. Mick says, I'm so beyond excited for the future of the Amazing Digital Circus. It's going to get even crazier and crazier. Oh, that it will.
Wrong with you?
Why didn't you fight back?
Oh, here we go. Here we go. Because I didn't fight back, that means I secretly care about you? I'm just a misunderstood little chicken fetus in an egg that needs to be cracked open. Well, I am not. I do not care about you or anyone else in this circus in the slightest. End of story. You are my playthings, and I get joy out of making you suffer.
Funny thing, so again, I brought this up kind of in passing earlier, but like teenage Lars would absolutely have identified with this, as cringy as it is to say that. And because that was me in high school, like hearing Jax, I'm like, yep, one doth protest too much. This isn't just you trying to convince Pomni. This is you trying to convince yourself.
I'm the one who causes pain for fun. If I led you on, it was just to make this part hurt you more.
See, in the way, and already right there, you can tell that they complete that was all just a facade, because he immediately breaks down the moment that he's done, because he realizes it's all a lie. And because she won't do him in, everything that he was building up to, yeah, it was all for nothing. He's exposed himself. Jax Shaw, dude, have a Kit Kat. No, Jax, have a Snickers, because you're not you when you're hungry.
There's nothing more to me. So please, just stop looking.
And there's his last little cry for just like, please, just leave me alone, because he feels like like what he did is irredeemable, and maybe it was, but that's completely consumed him, and everything that he's done since then has been trying to escape that. So let's then get to one of the other great conversations. There's a lot of just really, really good, necessary conversations to be had here. So Kinger trying to figure out what's wrong with Ragatha, and So here we go. Dang, I'm getting my chocolates mixed up. Don't worry, it's all good chocolate. It's all good chocolate.
Try too hard to get on their good side, and then I just...
Well, decided to finish the episode before I came to the stream. Very good episode. Well, 12, excuse me. Glad that you got to see it. Glad that you hopped on at least for the end of the stream, because holy cow, there goes my voice. Ooh. Take some water. Restore the voice a little. So, let's get...
end up pushing them away. And then they end up hating me.
Well, I don't think anyone in here hates you.
Jax does! Gangle and Subal don't ever talk to me, and Pomni probably won't after today either. She came to me wanting to be on my team. I said no. Why did I do that?
Maybe you just needed a break. It sounds to me like you put a lot of pressure on yourself to be there for everyone. And
so, are you okay? I've just been talking for so long, Common Craft, that when you do the live stream solo, it's hard to go on for a long time. We've been nearly doing this for 3 hours now. So, which is why we'll end after this. But I love how you got Ragatha just breaking down, being like, why did I make the choices that I did? What exactly am I doing? Ragatha was in a bad place in the last episode. And Kinger puts it into perspective. You've been doing a lot and you've been hard on yourself. And I've been here way too many times myself, either caring too much or trying to do too much. It just wears you down.
when you're not, you beat yourself up for it. You said you failed Pomni. Why do you feel that way?
I don't know. I feel like every day we're drifting further apart. Like she's seen through all my tricks and doesn't trust me anymore. Before I know it, she'll be a different person. One who doesn't even want me around.
The way I see it, relationships are two-sided. And sometimes it doesn't make sense to do all the heavy lifting when the other isn't in the mood. We all go through and deal with things differently, and sometimes you just need to let people do things their own way, as long as you're still there when they need you. Giving someone space should never be the same as giving up on them.
So, man, yeah, what Kinger said right there is just excellent advice. Absolutely excellent advice. Sometimes you just gotta give people space to let them do what they gotta do. Giving someone space is not you giving up on them, so long as you really do care, and that you're giving them space for the right reasons. That's very, very important to consider. And what he said about relationships is absolutely right. It's a two-way street. Both people have to be in it. And here's the thing. Like back in the day, I would say, oh, it's like 50-50. And sometimes it's like, no, sometimes it's going to be 90-10. In a best case scenario, it's both people giving it 100%. But not everyone can't always give 100% all the time. And so when someone isn't giving it 100%, you do what you can to make up the difference. And sometimes maybe you don't need to give in quite so much. Maybe both of you are putting in 20/20 for one day. But you know what? That's okay so long as you then come back later on giving it your all to this relationship because you care deeply about that person. Whether it is that you're talking about a friend, a loved one, a family member, your romantic partner. Again, you can't always give 100% every day, but you can every day do what is right by that other person, even if sometimes that means giving them a little bit of space. And I just find that to be great, great advice, which again, I would love to see what Cinema Therapy with the channel would have to say about this show. Because I think it would give them a lot to talk about, and it would also melt their brains a little bit. So let's hear. So to wrap things up right here, because I saw some other stuff being posted again about the dragons, which I love you guys are thinking about your worlds and your creations. Please continue on with that and keep on being creative. It's awesome. I love seeing what people come up with, because it's not me. And I love seeing other people be creative. I'm like, oh, I would never have thought of that. Or it would have taken me even longer to think about that. Sweet. It's so cool. I love it. Conquest says, another possibility for Jax I saw was one person suggesting that Jax may be trying to keep everyone away so that nobody will miss him once he abstracts. That's an interesting theory. That might be the case. He does kind of tell on himself as far as the abstracting goes. I just realized that the same observation regarding Ragatha can apply to Jax if you flip a few words around. He's putting too much pressure on himself for being a jerk I would say not just for being a jerk, but to be a jerk all the time. Mimic says, oh my gosh, the scene made me cry so much. Ragatha hit so close to home. We love you, Ragatha. I'm so glad Kinger was there for her, like how he was for Pomni too. Kinger's a sweetheart. Absolutely. Kinger is the MVP of this whole series. Because if it wasn't for Kinger, Pomni probably would have abstracted already. Kinger saved Pomni, and what I love is how Pomni in turn starts helping to save other people. She's paying it forward in the best way possible, which is the embodiment of what Kinger wanted her to do, but that Kinger has such a hard time doing because he has to be in absolute darkness or mostly darkness in order to have enough of his sanity to be the person that he needs to be. It's just sad. And to stay a jerk all the time, too, to make himself seem true to himself. Yeah, exactly. He's putting in so much effort. In the burger episode, when Jax was turned and burned out, he stopped being a jerk and avoided stepping on Ragatha while passing through her while she was on the floor. It makes me think that Jax is a person who is kind by nature and is forcing himself to be a jerk. Yeah, he's definitely forced himself into this persona. He has absolutely consumed it and has become it for reasons that we don't yet fully understand, because we don't yet know what happened to Froggy or Ribbit or whatever we're calling him. I'm just right now calling him Froggy. We don't know what happened to his friend. And as he tells Pomni when leading up to the whole gun thing, he has seen people abstract. And he's like, what? And he's gotten to the point, he's basically, I think one of the best ways of putting it, since this show is all about existential crises, is that at his heart, or at the heart of his problem, Jax is facing the existential crisis of fatalism. Nothing matters. As a result of nothing mattering, this is the kind of person he's become. Let's see here. By the way, the Invisible Man disappearing in the bathroom like that will never not be hilarious. Jax was like, what? I just had thoughts. One of the possibilities, Jax started off being a GTA 5 online gremlin, did a bunch of things, had real fun with being mean, but then he seemed he couldn't go back to acting like how he really did IRL after a long time and after enough time passed. Interesting. I can see that take. Hannah says, Jax scared me. Oh, yeah, he was plenty scary this episode. When someone asked about Jax's friend name, Gooseworks answered with Ribbit. So the current consensus is that Jax's friend was called Ribbit. Okay, we'll still go with Ribbit. Big the cat. Froggy. Mimic. Yet Pomni is taking after Kinger, and I think Ragatha also took after him too, but the pressure was way too much for her. Ragatha deserves a nice break. Pomni and Kinger's got her back. Absolutely. 12. I figure that his best friend abstracting is what hurt him the most, so he puts up this front as what he sees as a mercy to not put the perceived burden of mourning when he abstracts. And I can see as well, 12. I think that's a really good bit of insight. So yeah. So by the end of this episode, we definitely need to reevaluate who Jax is as a character. And I'm really looking forward to just knuckling down and doing my full review and analysis for this episode, because there's just so much to talk about, and it's all just so much good stuff. And we haven't really talked too much about Zubul and Gangel's conversation, which is also really, really good. There's just so much great character development going on, but obviously Jax definitely stole the show with everything that was going on with him. But let's not forget Ragatha and Kinger. Let's not forget Gangel and Zubul. And the fact that Zubul is feeling very horny right now. Oh boy. I think Disappearing Man happening right there was making Jax's disconnect worse, hammering how everything is a joke under Kane's whim. Gooseworks is a good writer. I agree, 12. And if I would just to clarify, I mean that him suddenly going back to how he acted IRL would never be accepted as him being genuine, so he started trying hard from there. He is a tryhard. He's a tryhard to uphold his online persona, his toxic online persona. All right, so with all that being said, everyone, thank you so much for joining me for this live stream. This was a lot of fun to talk about, to get into. I think that next week, I definitely want to break down the conversation that Jax and Pomni have, because I think it's an excellent example of good dialogue and also putting the dialogue into action. And then we'll go on from there with other things. Ming says, yep, who exactly is Jax behind that petty, bratty, jerkwad frat boy persona? Concraft, thank you for these streams and videos. Well, thank you, Concraft, for showing up for them. It's always a pleasure. And to everyone else, thank you so much for joining me on this incredible adventure that we call writing. And until the next video, y'all, choose.